Iron Hammer keeps staring back. The madam treats top earners like her property, only to get tossed back post-divorce. Now she washes dirty tables during the day. That is the fate, waiting for any girl who tries to escape. And then, guess who I spot wiping down tables, and was demoted to the lowest rank. The madam slaps her hard across the face, handing Iron Hammer the food boxes. I tell him directly, what you cannot hold onto has absolutely no value. He immediately rips the box open, and shoves a whole chicken leg right inside. I kick him, but he just grins. Next, I take him to the escort agency. Woo Din Yu? They start sketching a rough portrait of the real Ru, based on Iron Hammer's clear description, and I gather details about his hometown to narrow down our search. Their massive network covers the entire Yuzhou region. If that poor girl is alive, they will find her. Iron Hammer notices how they respect me here, with Wu Santong calling me brother Wu Xianhua, and hanging on my every word. He asks what our actual connection is. He just stared at me, completely bewildered. And the construction project, his jaw dropped. I offered him the deal, a village house and 5 acres, in exchange for loyalty. He made good money but never owned land or a home. What I offered him meant real roots. Then I had Tiaoba help him choose a house, and scrap iron was waiting for him to melt down, to reforge once I finally returned home. Brick bed had been burning non-stop since we finished building it. The entire bedroom was easily at least 5 degrees warmer than the outside. You could strip right down to light clothes and feel perfectly cozy. I walked inside and found both sisters leaning over the bed, smoothing out blankets. Honestly, that view from behind nearly set me on fire. Wen Din turned around first, wearing a soft smile, walked over and pulled them both close. They blushed, softly protesting that there was still work left. Wen Din tried to resist but gave up almost immediately, and kissing me without any warning. That is exactly the kind of woman I love. Wen Din just sighed, accepted her fate, and slowly started undressing. 1 hour later, and told them to get up and start cooking dinner. Wen Din noticed the food box was from Yihong Yuan, the local brothel's name printed right there. Quite skeptical at first, until Wen Din just laughed. It would be their own fault for not keeping me satisfied. The sisters giggled and playfully threatened me that once Wu Xianyu joined them, they would all take turns. Thinking about Wu Xianyu, I just grinned. How wedding nights actually worked. She would probably be utterly terrified. By that evening, it was the final day of my 3-day deadline. Right at dinner time, when the whole village was indoors. And look, a sneaky figure was poking out the gate. Then they carefully carried Wang Chongqing onto it, hoping to slip away completely unseen. I quietly followed them from a distance, smiling, quietly whispering to his servant, asking if anyone was actually watching. The servant said the village was pretty quiet. Everyone was eating dinner. He muttered that I wouldn't let him leave in peace. And he was right. Wang Chongqing's group slipped out at dusk. His loyal servant kept reassuring him. So why would I even bother with him now? That he could start over somewhere else, with all his hidden cash. Once they reached the main road, they finally relaxed. Watch this, a sharp whistle suddenly slices through the night air. 5 dark figures emerge from the shadows. Surrounding them was Wang Dinglu from Heaven's Peak, face masked, blade already drawn, offering a 100-tael note with shaking hands, and slices off the hand holding the money. Kill them all. No survivors. In seconds, it was completely over. Once the screaming stops, I step out from the grass. Wang Dinglu's men nearly charge straight at me, before he barks at them to stand down. I tell him I just had to be sure that Wang Chongqing was actually dead. Multiple deep stab wounds, each one hitting something vital. The man was thoroughly finished, plus valuable jewelry on his body. Naturally, the bandits were thrilled. I tell them to take the whole ox cart, all the grain, everything. Just burn the bodies far away, where absolutely nobody will ever find them. Wang Dinglu sincerely thanked me, and mentions that his boss wants a meeting. They wanted to be friends, so I agreed. On their way back, Wang Dinglu's group ran into something unexpected, asking if this was the path to Sawa village. Who told them our chief was a good man? Wang Dinglu was almost having a crisis, and starving refugees were already crowding around, begging for food since they smelled the blood, so he whipped the ox forward. Later on, one of his men complained about me tailing them. You'd think a guy who destroyed that entire river fortress, all alone, is someone we can afford to cross, far away from where I dealt with those water bandits. Unaware of the terror I'd left behind in all the other bandit camps. Turns out, wiping them out in one swift move, I heard someone calling out to me. Turning around, I saw a crowd of over 20 people. A young woman quickly explained their situation. They were starving refugees, led here directly by Wu Santong's recommendation. I didn't hesitate. Honestly, that made them loyal. I gave them my dinner, boiling huge pots of porridge for everyone. The thin gruel wasn't anything special. They devoured absolutely everything my meal. The farm workers' dinners, even the last scrap of pickled vegetables. Standing there, it hit me. If I had not seized Wang Chongqing's territory and looted all that grain from the river pirates' fort, I could never feed this many people. Their leader, Lin Zishi, introduced herself. She explained they had run all the way from the border, desperately searching for any place to survive. They would do any work at all, just for some food. Their very lives belonged to me. I inspected them all pretty fit and healthy. 16 men, 6 women, 4 kids, none older than 30. Solid, capable folks. So, I asked about their skills. Just basic farmers and herders. But Lin Xiaoxing mentioned a guy named Josie, who apparently was a skilled carpenter. I just spent almost 200 silver taels to hire a blacksmith, so a free carpenter showing up, absolute jackpot. When I called him over, a tall guy stepped forward, busy licking leftover porridge from his wooden bowl. His face was literally covered in soot. Honestly, he looked pretty dim-witted. He begged for food, so Lin Zishi kicked him and yelled at him for ruining everything. Right at this crucial moment, chuckling, I told him if he wanted to eat until he burst, he had to prove his worth. I tossed him the custom wooden lock I made for the horse ranch gate, a complex Tibetan design I learned in my past life. And let me tell you, nobody here could crack it, not even guards. But Josie took it, pulled a tiny hand axe from his belt, and got straight to work. He broke it down, studying its inner workings, and mastered the design almost instantly. He popped it open effortlessly, and that was all the proof I needed. This kid was a pure genius and natural-born master craftsman. Lin Zishi looked visibly relieved. Honestly, she was way sharper than she was letting on. She had noticed the bandits loading corpses onto the ox carts right outside the village. Quickly realizing I was not someone to mess with, she didn't even flinch, understanding exactly how this brutal world worked now. In times like these, only the ruthless survive. She had taken command of her people the same way, by putting down a beast who tried to assault her. After entering my village, and seeing how peaceful everyone here actually lived, fed, settled, she made her choice, knowing I could be harsh. But I always protected what was mine. Finding a sanctuary like this was basically a miracle. During these chaotic times, I caught her watching me, waiting for my final answer. All of these desperate refugees followed her here, and if I turned them away now, saddled with guilt forever, I had no idea. But Lin Zishi was ready to sacrifice absolutely anything for them. But I was looking at Juicy. I asked him once more if he could actually duplicate my complex wooden locking mechanism. His reply was short, plain, and simple. So, I told him to go ahead and build one. He admitted it would take at least half a day. Honestly, he wasn't about to lie to me. That blunt honesty made me like him even more. If he had claimed he could finish it instantly, and trust me, real honesty is rare. Truth is, I did not need an ordinary carpenter who could only build simple benches. I needed a craftsman who could eventually build crossbows and deadly weapons. That is why I paid top dollar for Zhang Taijuai, our blacksmith. Juicy was precisely the kind of person I needed. Straightforward, simple-minded, and easy to please. Just feed him, and he is genuinely skilled. I told him we would build his workshop starting tomorrow, where he would be crafting bows and arrows, but I held back on showing him any blueprints. I still did not trust Lin Zishi. If she turned out to be a spy and leaked my designs, that would become a massive headache. So, if there were any other skilled professionals hiding in her crowd, Lin Zhou said the men could handle any hard labor, and the women were highly skilled at sewing, cooking, and other useful household chores. Plus, Xinger had been managing all the kitchen duties alone, without ever uttering a single complaint. They definitely deserved a break. So I divided the women into 3-person groups to handle cooking at the horse farm and brick factory. As for my own meals, I would strictly eat at home. Can't be too careful. Suddenly, Lin Zhou chased after me, eagerly asking what her job would be. I quite liked that she wasn't lazy. I told her she would have 12 people under her command to officially form a village guard. She would train them with wooden spears. But here's the sneaky part of my real plan. By scattering her people across different work sites, I would slowly weaken her influence over them. Plus, the guard team would eventually be mixed. with the local villagers. This balanced the power dynamic between the horse, farm guards, our village guards, and Wang Dian's men. In total, that meant 70 or 80 fighters. More than enough. By the next morning, I finalized all the assignments with 0 cooking duties, so the Mu sisters finally had much easier days ahead. But then, I realized, I desperately needed someone to manage our growing accounts. Since Accountant G was too busy running the escort agency, I turned to the sisters instead. They could both read and write, and as the trusted women of my household, managing our finances made perfect sense. Husband, you really want us to manage the accounts? Can you blame them? They could hardly believe it. Chinger jumped right in, working that abacus like she was absolutely born for it, calculating every single coin down to the last detail. By noon, I was completely at ease. It was time for my meeting at Tianwei Mountain, the notorious bandit stronghold. I brought my axe and slipped my impossibly sharp dagger into a hidden spot on my body, just in case. Wang Dinglu was waiting right on the road outside the village. As promised, he looked pretty impressed I came alone. He said their boss genuinely wanted to meet me, but still, riding into a bandit fortress alone took major guts. I just smiled. Honestly, my own people were all busy. Plus, bringing Lin Zishi to something this important, it just did not feel right. Besides, it was just some mountain hideout, not some deadly death trap. Wang Dingli gave me a thumbs up. Then he had someone bring out a horse. A beautiful chestnut mare named Zhao Hong, the boss's personal favorite. He said the boss sent her specially, since their stronghold was dozens of li away. He did not want me getting tired. A horse like that is not easy to find, and the gesture told me a lot. They were definitely taking this meeting very seriously. I looked at Wang Dinglu and his companion. They were apparently planning to follow me on foot. I almost laughed. How were two guys on foot supposed to keep pace with a fast horse? I asked Wang Dinglu how many horses their stronghold had. He just laughed and said this was their only one. They only had a few mules for hauling stuff. So when I asked why their boss did not ride his own beloved horse, Wang Dinglu just gave me a bitter smile and said, I would understand once I got there, but I quickly figured it out myself. Their boss must be disabled somehow. When I finally reached the gates of Tianwaishan, honestly, you won't believe this. This was supposed to be a bandit hideout, but it was absolutely spotless. Every single stone step had been scrubbed clean. The welcoming bandits wore incredibly neat, tidy clothes. The buildings were arranged in perfect, neat rows. There were flowers and green plants everywhere. I felt like I had walked into some rich family's estate, not some mountain fortress. At the main hall entrance, Wang Dinglu stopped me. Two kids walked out holding feather dusters. I brushed the dust off my clothes. Then someone brought out a tray of clean shoes for me to wear. My jaw almost dropped. Did I somehow travel back in time again? Inside the spotless hall, a pretty elegant young man sat behind a massive desk. He had the delicate features of a scholar. The moment he saw me, he stood up, adjusted his robes, and welcomed me with a very polite bow. He introduced himself as Wu Zhang, Tianwaishan's actual head boss. Next came the second chief, Zhao Rang, a sturdy guy, around 45 with graying hair and an intense vibe. Third, Jia Shanchuan. Wang Dinglu led their infantry, and Zhang Shun managed their security. Just 5 men made up their leadership. I introduced myself using only a few short words. Lu Feng, a simple Saiwa villager. Honestly, I was laughing. Inside, and get this, 3 bosses and 2 commanders, behaving like they controlled some legendary, grand army. Zhao Rang stood up first to raise a toast, shouting out my guts for coming completely alone. He downed his entire bowl in one go. A simple, straightforward man with true warrior spirit. The others followed, but I noticed something. Wu Zhang looked highly annoyed that Zhao Rang had jumped ahead of him as host. I kept quiet and filed that away. After a drink with Wu Zhang, I got straight to the point. He surely didn't invite a tiny village leader up here just to feast and drink. My bluntness caught him so off guard, making him choke and cough into his white handkerchief. I noticed it had pretty flowers stitched all over it. Between his handsome face and that flowery silk, you can probably guess what I was thinking then. But his voice was definitely male, just highly feminine. The food was pretty impressive though, serving up wild game and decent wine. Not quite as strong as my own distilled liquor, but still, pretty decent for this era. Wu Zhang suddenly clapped his hands, and Wang Dinglu dragged in a bound prisoner. Jia Shanchuan stood right beside him. Setting down my chopsticks, I saw a barbarian. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Were they planning to defect to the enemy? Was this a captured scout? Were they trying to drag me into treason? Wujong quickly explained. His patrol had caught two barbarian scouts earlier. One died under torture, but they kept this one alive. Jaishan Chuan had done business in the northern barbarian lands before and could actually communicate with them. They got some vital intelligence. Winter was coming. The main army held the fortress at Tianyu City, so the barbarians could not break through head-on. Instead, they sent swarms of scouts and raiders deep into Yuzhou territory, planning small-scale attacks to completely disrupt our forces, and more importantly, cut off the army's food supply to starve them out. I listened quietly. Wujong looked like a scholar, but still a bandit. I did not buy his talk of patriotism. And here comes the real twist. There was an elite barbarian squad hiding in the valley west of their mountain. Wujong admitted Tia Weishan was not strong enough to take on that elite barbarian squad alone. But if I joined forces with them, we could easily handle those 100 elite fighters. I casually picked up a juicy piece of roast lamb and asked if they confirmed the exact location. They absolutely did. Wang Dinglu scouted their camp himself and found quite massive stockpiles of grain, war horses, weapons, and heavy armor. It looked like a massive supply base, where more barbarian units would gather later. That immediately sent a cold chill down my spine. All those supplies could not have been carried over mountains by hand. The barbarians had carefully planned this invasion, well ahead of schedule. Enough weapons and armor to equip 1,000 soldiers. If a massive force of raiders hit Yuzhou's supply lines, the consequences would be absolutely devastating. But there was no way I would fall for patriotic speeches. I saw straight through their little game. They were just outlaws hunting for supplies, using national honor as bait to drag me into their war. But my only focus was Sawa village, which meant I was not working for free. I told Wujong I only cared about one thing. What exactly happens after we win? The room went dead silent. Wang Dinglu and his men looked completely displeased. Wujong ordered the barbarian prisoner taken away, before turning to ask for my terms. I held up 3 fingers and demanded 70. Wujong assumed 30 was fair and smiled. Thinking I wanted 30%, he even offered me 40. I corrected him, 70 for me, and 30 for them. Silence. They argued that their own men gathered the intel, while risking their lives scouting. I shut them down. Without me, without my skills, they would surely fail. They could either take 30% of a fortune, or 100% of absolutely nothing. I was calm, leaving absolutely zero room for any debate. Wujong agreed since he had no real choice. Winter was fast approaching, and keeping 100 bandits fed through the freeze was already a crisis. They could not buy food openly because of their status as outlaws, and stealing from poor villagers was no longer something they did. The barbarian stockpile was their only lifeline. To soften the blow, I offered to split it by category. They could take most of the food and winter supplies, since that was what they needed most. I was not heartless. What I actually wanted was the weapons and armor. My village already had plenty of grain stored away, all thanks to those water bandits. The secret cellar Tialaoba found. Honestly, weapons were the one thing I desperately needed. With the deal sealed, we drank more. Wang Dinglu promised to guide me to the barbarian camp. Personally, I wanted this finished pretty fast, so I rushed straight home to prepare. Once back home, I found the sisters fluttering around the yard like happy little butterflies, holding my 2 tiger cubs. Those little beasts had gotten pretty massive since I first brought them home. Like, how did they somehow tame those fierce predators into obedient little puppies? But there was another guest in my yard, Wu Shenghua. The very second she heard me, her entire face flushed bright red. She was definitely still blushing over what happened between us, right after I took down that bear. I had zero plans to tell Wu Shan about our barbarian raid. With her crazy attitude, she would insist on coming along. I still remember how she almost got me killed, back during that bear hunt, against 100 elite barbarian scouts. There was no way I would risk her acting reckless. At the exact wrong moment, she just pointed to some pastries on the table, claiming they were brought from Tianyu City, specifically for my 2 little sisters, telling me to eat them if I wanted, completely pretending like she did not care. Then she just stormed off, clearly frustrated because I was acting pretty cold. Deep down, she was begging me to call her back, but I stayed silent, forcing her to turn around one last time, warning me about that upcoming martial arts tournament happening at the Great Snow Festival. Apparently, some wealthy young lord from Tianyu City, who had trained hard since childhood, was going to compete too. She warned me not to get too cocky, just because I was strong. With that, she stomped away, kicking pebbles along the path, struggling pretty hard to keep myself from laughing. Those pastries were clearly bought for me, not her sister's. She was just jealous, worrying that I might lose the upcoming match. But the Moose sisters noticed everything. Wendin was gentle, sweet, and wise, while Shanyu seemed bold and careless on the outside, fragile inside, though. 3 completely different women. Naturally, Wendin guessed something was going on, so I told them about Tia Weishen's discovery. A barbarian scout outpost. We're talking enough gear to equip 1,000 soldiers. All of it meant to sabotage our supply lines, and Tia Weishen wanted my help wiping them out. Naturally, Wendin asked if it was dangerous. I didn't sugarcoat the truth. These weren't ordinary bandits like the Waterfort crew. They were highly trained elite soldiers, and there were far too many. Most of our escort agency's men were injured, making them useless for military combat. Sure, Shanyu had some solid skills, but she was way too impulsive for this task. Wenshin's heart trembled, especially when I mentioned age and maturity. She was actually even younger than Shang Hue. Yet I trusted them completely with our accounts. That's when she realized how much I trusted them. I told them not to worry, I had a plan. If there was one single thing I brought from my past life, it was studying old history books. During long missions, I'd read up on various ancient wars, chariots, and battle formations. I grabbed a brush and quickly started drawing. Before long, Wendin looked at my sketch and asked why on earth I drew a turtle. I glared right back. It wasn't a turtle. A literal tank, well, sort of. Specifically, a wooden war chariot, inspired by the legendary tactics in Water Margin. In that novel, these chariots were absolutely devastating in battle, even against legendary warriors. Like Guansheng, my design used interlocking, stout wooden beams designed to deflect most incoming weapons, wicked spikes jetting right out the sides, guaranteed to punish anyone getting too close. Plus, we could mount blades to slice through enemies as the beast rolled forward. But I knew plain woodwork wouldn't last forever. If John Taijuai, our blacksmith, was actually back here with his tools, I could have armored it in heavy iron. But right now, I had to improvise. The original design from the novel relied on men inside to push it, but wasting precious manpower like that was stupid. So I slapped 4 round wheels on the bottom. That way, they could push from behind. Sure, the mobility would be terrible, but against highly trained barbarian squads, I needed to fight a defensive holding battle, not some wild chase, and each chariot needed 4 men, pushers, who could also strike at enemies during the clash. Honestly, this was the absolute best given our resources. Facing elite, heavily outnumbering barbarian forces, a direct, head-on battle was pure suicide. Our best shot was a brutal surprise attack, backed by fire. Now, these tank chariots weren't built for night raids or fire, but they could perfectly block escape routes. Once the melee starts, these wooden beasts would shine, but that was my backup plan. Everything depended entirely on the terrain. I spent hours drawing up detailed blueprints, spanning 5 full pages for the exterior, inner structure, and wheel mechanisms. I designed everything with classic mortise and tenon joints, meaning the entire machine could be easily disassembled and carried straight through rough terrain. Juicy was someone I trusted for this. I mean, the kid solved my puzzle lock in minutes. Calling Juicy over, I explained the blueprints. He just scratched his head, looking pretty confused by this weird contraption, but he nodded, so I gave him 3 days. 3 war machines, 0 excuses. If he needed extra hands to get things done, he went straight to find Lin Zici, which was honestly exactly what I wanted. Her people were going to build the tanks, and then ride them straight into battle, so the more they worked with these machines, the better they'd fight, bright and early. Wang Dinglu showed up at the village with 2 men. We rode mules straight up into the mountains, slower than horses, sure, but way better than walking. After 2 long hours of winding through the steep hills, we finally neared the hidden barbarian camp. Wang Dinglu left 1 guy behind to watch the mules, while the rest of us crept forward on foot. They chose well. The camp sat hidden deep inside a wide valley, locked in by massive mountains on 3 sides, with thick forests sealing the rest. Seriously, you'd be completely lost without a guide, like Wang Dinglu to lead the way. I carefully peeked over a dark boulder to scan the entire valley below. Row after row of tents lined the stream, completely crowding the valley. Enemy soldiers were moving between them, some prepping food, others butchering sheep. The rich scent of roasting meat drifted up on the breeze, making Wang Dinglu and his hungry men swallow hard. But their actual defenses, that got me worried. They built a massive perimeter fence, and even dug deep, water-filled trenches. Trust me, this is not how nomads usually act. They never settle down and dig trenches. I pointed out this strange detail to Wang Dinglu. Then more weird details jumped out. These sheep were black, a specific breed from Ninjo, not the white ones these tribes usually herd. Plus, most of their supplies were clearly stolen, right from our lands. But the absolute biggest puzzle was the camp layout. The valley had only one entrance, yet their gate faced the exact opposite direction. You had to wind along a narrow, cliffside path, just to step inside, for a people whose absolute main strength was cavalry. This layout made zero sense. Their riders couldn't move freely through it at all. I asked Wang Dinglu to explain. He just scratched his head, completely clueless. Seriously, this camp just didn't add up. These weren't ordinary barbarian scouts setting up some temporary base. Someone with serious tactical knowledge designed this layout. Wang Dinglu had scouted this camp multiple times, but never noticed anything strange. Now that I pointed it out, he finally saw it too. I explained exactly what I figured out. Those water-filled trenches would easily weaken any fire attack. The wooden fences blocked heavy rolling logs and boulders. The tents looked completely scattered, but they actually sat under thick tree canopy, making direct arrow strikes nearly useless. And that reversed entrance, it gave them plenty of reaction time. If attacked, whoever designed this camp was no fool. Wang Dinglu quietly asked what we should do. I slowly shook my head. A direct clash against elite barbarian warriors. With our small numbers would be suicide. I asked how much fire oil our stronghold possessed. He said we had some, but worried that burning the camp would destroy all the vital supplies we needed. I told him to look closer. The visible supplies could only feed that many men for roughly half a month. So where was the rest of their winter food? It had to be buried underground or hidden somewhere else entirely. So I ordered Wang Dinglu to spend the next few days secretly watching their camp. If the barbarians went out to retrieve supplies, he had to track where they went, and if they never left, then their food was buried underground, which actually worked heavily in our favor. We could burn everything above ground, and the real stockpile would survive. I leaned in, whispering some highly specific instructions to him. Whatever I whispered in his ear completely shocked him. Then, he flashed me a huge thumbs up. He found it ruthless. This happened right after parting ways with Wang Dinglu. I rode straight to Wanhuan County and bought myself a set of quality carpentry tools. But seeing this terrain changed everything. Those tanks, chariots would be completely useless in this mountain valley. What I actually needed was a trebuchet. No Juicy crew, or Lindsay's crew helping build it. I didn't trust them, not with this level of technology. I decided to build it myself since the concept is simple. I couldn't build a tension-based model without proper, elastic materials, so I opted for a counterweight design. A compact version would work, set right on the ridge above, lobbing raw fire and oil across the entire enemy camp below. At home, I sketched the blueprints. The Moose sisters quietly watched me work for hours, completely clueless about what I was making, but they never asked. They just brewed tea and handed me tools. When Din asked why I built such weird devices, I patted her cheek, saying it was nothing. Just a simple wooden frame, I laughed. My head was totally full of inventions. Washing soaps, clear glass, flameless lamps brighter than any candle, carriages moving without horses, and powerful explosives. Look at her eyes widening. She asked if I was planning to enlist. That honestly caught me off guard. I had no such intention. Everything I made was strictly for self-defense, not war. I wouldn't hand my tech over. If they ever hit a real battlefield, it would only be as a last resort. But I promised her, if anyone threatens my family, I will fight the entire empire if needed. She nodded firmly. 2 days later, the trebuchet was ready. It was small enough for 2 men to carry. Once taken apart, he tested it in a quiet spot with Tia, plus Lullaby and Wang San. They spent 3 whole days fixing the problems. But the counterweight was way too light for his target, so he tweaked the lever's curve, got Yang Guizi to carve a heavy stone, and raised the main throwing arm higher. Then, Zhang Taitsue the blacksmith returned with the big supply convoy. A second batch of bricks was fresh from the kill. He chose his spot and started building his new smithy. Everything was starting to click. Wu Santong finished unloading the gear and brought some new The horse farm only had 5 days of feed left. Their next supply run meant heading south, a completely new route, taking another 5 days. If anything went sideways, it would take even longer. Our guy told him not to worry. Once the water fort became their main supply hub, he would set up a massive fishing operation. Look at that spot, 7 waterways absolutely packed with fish. And since nobody actually claimed that territory, it was the ultimate backup food reserve. Down the road, he would build a fortress and granary. Even the barbarians could not reach it, since they literally cannot swim. Just then, Wu Santong pulled out a jar of white powder, saltpeter. His heart raced instantly. And you know what that means, gunpowder time. With enough of this, he could build cannons soon. Wu Santong found it at a pharmacy in Tianying City, but the amount was quite small and highly expensive. He immediately told Shinger to give him 300 silver taels, and made his orders clear. Buy up every single scrap of saltpeter out there. Price does not matter, the horse feed can wait. This cannot. Once the man left, our guy grabbed the charcoal and sulfur he had already stashed at home. He ground everything down, mixing the 3 components together. Then, he packed the powder into a paper tube with a fuse, sealed it with mud and dried it, then carried it to the empty hillside behind my house. I lit up the fuse and threw it. The weight felt like literal centuries. Then bang! A sharp crack echoed right through the air, and I finally let out the breath I was holding. Back in my past life, I constructed sophisticated, timed explosives and powerful high-tech bombs. Yet here I was now, sweating and wondering if this simple homemade firecracker would even work. The absolute irony made me laugh. This primitive world was seriously holding back my expertise. The real headache here was supply. Saltpeter was incredibly rare and expensive. Producing gunpowder in bulk was totally out of the question for now. Sometimes salt fields had saltpeter deposits nearby, but the government fully controlled those locations. I could still extract tiny amounts from nitrate, rich soil, or even horse manure, but definitely not enough to feed cannons. Crafting a few matchlock muskets though, totally doable. Once Zhang Kijwei finished building his forge, I would melt down the weapons looted from Waterford, and secure enough raw iron for 1 actual gun. That very evening Wang Dinglu came riding in on a mule, grinning broadly from ear to ear, shouting that they found the barbarians' hidden grain depot. It was incredibly well hidden, just like I predicted. They had walked right past it multiple times. There were barely any guards, so they captured it already. I immediately spat out my tea. They took it over. Who told them to do that? This was the absolute opposite of what I wanted. Seizing that depot will alert the barbarians instantly, and just like that, our entire advantage is gone. Wang Dinglu looked completely confused, protesting that I was the one who said cutting off their food would throw them into chaos. I nearly slapped him. If this was my old military unit, anyone pulling a reckless stunt like this would have earned a broken leg, at least. I forced a deep breath and immediately started shouting orders. Head back to the fortress right now. Gather every warrior and bring all my requested gear. Tell the soldiers guarding the grain depot to dress up as enemy barbarian scouts. Play it cool and meet up on the high ridge just above the enemy camp. Seriously, we had 0 time left. This strike had to happen now. Wang Dinglu knew he screwed up big time, and bolted instantly. I cursed softly under my breath. My plans for a peaceful, quiet night at home were completely shattered into absolute chaos. There wasn't a single second to lose. I quickly grabbed a thick winter coat, gave the sisters rapid instructions to watch the place, and mobilized everyone immediately. Wang Yan and 2 of my most reliable guys carried the taken-apart trebuchet, each carrying 1 section. Lin Ziji's guard unit dragged the armored tank chariots, while Qialalba packed gear onto 12 different horses. We marched out fast, fully loaded. Reaching the mountain base, horses would draw too much and wanted attention, so we packed everything onto our own backs, and left Qialalba down below with the animals. Tian Weichen's squad actually showed up 30 minutes early. At our rendezvous spot, I shared the tank parts with his men too, and we all started climbing up together. And trust me, I roasted Wang Dinglu the entire climb up. He knew he messed up and kept his mouth shut. Jia Shanchuan, the 3rd boss, was in a pretty fantastic mood. The giant was easily carrying that massive trebuchet frame right on his shoulders, cracking jokes the whole time to keep everyone smiling. Zhirong, the 2nd boss, approached me with a polite, smooth excuse. He claimed Wu Zhang wanted him to follow my lead, but argued his personal troops were aging veterans, far too old for frontline fighting. Better off playing a backup role. I saw right through his scheme, but didn't have time to debate. I put them on trebuchet guard duty. Honestly, it made perfect sense. Seasoned warriors. Keeping my absolute best weapon safe. After trekking for 2 hours, we hit our spot in the dead of night. The enemy guards would be completely asleep. My troops were totally exhausted from hours of non-stop marching, so I let them get some sleep, while my top guys assembled the tanks and trebuchet. Then duty assignments. Zhang Zhuan took all the fire straight over to the right flank and covered the heavy tank chariots. The very second they charged the camp, Wang Dinglu was covering Zhang Zhuan to slay anyone who slipped past. Lin Zishi had 30 minutes to build all those tanks and block off that valley entrance completely. No barbarian gets out alive. Meanwhile, Wang Dian, Zhang Hongde, and Li Fei, my elite archers, stayed near the trebuchet, raining down flaming arrows to pick off anyone trying to break through. Directly toward our hill, Jia Shuan patrolled the perimeter, guarding against flanking attacks. Zhang asked about his role. I just pointed to the pile behind our weapon, fire oil and jars of manure. That was our MO. Honestly, his face fell. Tough, but that was his assignment. Guard the supplies. Now watch, I aimed the first shot. With dense forest all around, accuracy was everything. I carefully calibrated the angle. I adjusted trajectory, yielding fire. The trebuchet arm swung with a heavy groan. A jar of fire oil sailed into the night and vanished. Seconds later, pottery shattered loudly, echoed from the barbarian camp below. A few night guards heard the strange noise and headed over to investigate. The second jar was already loaded. I aimed directly for a wooden supply shed. After adjusting my aim, the trebuchet's precision from here was spot on. The jar shattered perfectly on target. The camp guards finally woke up to the danger. Holding a torch, they spotted the dark puddle, took a sniff and panicked, shouting alarms. They woke up the whole camp. And honestly, that panic is perfect. Over 20 flaming arrows sliced straight through gaps in the tree canopy, raining absolute hell on the base. The oil I already splashed acted like instant fuel. Massive blazes erupted everywhere. My third shot aimed right for their main well, coating the entire area in oil, so they had absolutely zero chance of putting out the fire. Confused barbarians stumbled out of their tents, completely trapped by rising walls of flame. Lin Zishi tracked the blast count carefully, and on the fifth explosion, she led the charge. 3 heavily armed chariots rolled out, blocking off the valley exit and trapping everyone inside. Escape was officially impossible. Their leader moved quickly, desperate to quickly rally his men into defensive positions. Terrible timing. As the soldiers grouped closely together, the trebuchet launched its next massive payload. Directly at the crowd, it struck 2 men and splattered absolutely everywhere. Dripping wet. One sniff of that awful smell, and they realized manure. Their line shattered immediately. Men ran everywhere, choking and gagging, shoving each other to find clean wash water. Absolute chaos. Zhang whined that guarding jars of poop was beneath his elite warriors. I reminded him he begged for a safe job. He shut up. I just laughed, promising him that the real fight was starting soon. I kept launching the disgusting payload, leaving literally nowhere clean to hide. Their leader finally gave up on the flames, ordering a desperate, head-on charge, but their tiny camp was way too packed. Hundreds of panicked men surged forward in pitch darkness. It only made the chaos worse. I quickly ordered our archers to target anyone fleeing. Wang Din and my men had turned into deadly marksmen. Under my strict training, any barbarian showing his head got hit by an arrow. Constant, relentless attacks completely shattered their morale. With the exit blocked by those massive tank chariots, and raging fire consuming their camp, despair took over. Most had fled their tents without any weapons or armor. Anyone reaching the valley mouth faced a truly terrifying sight. 3 massive war chariots blocked every single inch of the exit. Honestly, they had never seen anything like them. Absolutely no weak points. A few brave souls tried climbing over them, and were instantly cut down by the hidden fighters inside. They tried rushing in groups of 5 or 6. They actually managed to pry off some blades, and even pin down an inner sword. But each chariot held 3 fighters. Once one was occupied, his partner struck, piling bodies high at the barricade, without horses to lead a real cavalry charge. These barbarians had no way to smash through. Their commander finally forced his way to the front, and realized the attacks were mostly just noise. Our real numbers were tiny. He ordered his men to abandon the valley floor and scramble up the mountain sides instead. It worked. Barbarian soldiers scrambled up those exposed tree roots, scaling the rocky slopes in minutes. Around 30 or 40 made it up, so I turned to Jiraiya. This was his moment, and man, his eyes lit up. He had been itching for a good fight all night. He was a powerful warrior himself, and his veterans were highly experienced killers. Drawing his massive cleaver, pointed it forward and bellowed at his men. Brothers, follow me, kill. The barbarians kept climbing up, but in the dark, their morale was completely shattered. Anyone who actually climbed up became easy prey. Jorang was an absolute monster in combat, massive and brutal, slicing through enemies like cheap vegetables. With his massive cleaver, barely anyone lasted more than 3 exchanges with him. He even mocked them, asking if this was really the best their elite barbarian force had to offer. But the pressure was building fast. As more enemies came pouring out of the burning camp, I left the trebuchet behind, grabbed my trusty crossbow and loaded a special heavy bolt. My target was their commander sitting high on horseback. He kept safe from our trebuchets and arrow range, but get this. My weapon had more than double the range and speed of a standard bow. By the time he sensed danger, it was already too late. The heavy bolt punched clean through his skull, and the sheer impact sent him flying off his horse. One shot, instant death. Jai Shuan appeared immediately, begging to inspect my crossbow. I completely ignored him and walked away. A sharp flash of anger crossed his eyes, almost murderous. I noted it but did not care. If I did not still need him, he would be dead. Later on, he tried sneaking closer to examine the trebuchet. Before his hand touched it, my blade was already swinging. He yanked his hand back, sweating cold, and muttered some excuse about admiring the wood. I told him flatly, touch my stuff and lose your hand. He backed away when Wang Yan returned. I ordered the trebuchet dismantled immediately. Jai Shuan just stared at the wooden pieces, completely unable to figure out how they fit together. Just 30 minutes after their commander fell, dawn starts breaking. Now here comes the final push. Heavy assault chariots led the charge, with everyone else sweeping right behind them. The barbarians were burned, pelted with filth, shot with arrows, and totally demoralized all night. By full daylight, the camp was completely cleared. Wang Dinglu greeted me with a huge grin, clearly thrilled about the haul. I asked about that separate grain depot, the one his men seized earlier. He confirmed all supplies were safe, and guarded by 2 of his brothers. With their guards gone, they were disposed of in the mountains. He said that massive stockpile there was easily several times larger than what we had here. I told him to finish up here first. The entire camp reeked of smoke and manure, barely walkable, yet the fire was not actually that devastating. Aside from some lost grain and loose cattle, the weapons and armor were totally untouched. Just from this camp alone, the pile of weapons and armor formed a small mountain, and somehow this was only a fraction. The storage caves held dozens more crates. I picked up a sword and froze. Get this, these were not curved barbarian blades. They were straight imperial long swords, identical to standard issue, standard weapons of the Great Li dynasty, and every last one was brand new. Gleaming cold, Wang Dinglu was totally confused. After all, the barbarians fought last night, using their own curved sabers and heavy horse-chopping blades. Why did they have these? Watch what happened when we opened a crate. My jaw dropped. Row after row of completely pristine armor, and none of it was barbarian-made. Every suit belonged to the Great Li dynasty's army. Everyone stood utterly shocked by the imperial crests. Looking at them, Jia Shuan suggested, the barbarians might have raided our military supply convoys. Right then, Lin Zishi dragged out a prisoner, whom she found hiding in a tent. A man wearing his hair in our traditional topknot, dressed in Great Li clothes. Clearly, he was one of us. My face turned cold. We might have stumbled onto something massive, way bigger than a simple barbarian. If this camp led back to a powerful noble, secretly dealing with our sworn enemy, things were going to get pretty dangerous. I ordered the prisoner taken away immediately. Before Jia Shuan could even say a word, Lin Zishi had worked incredibly hard to capture this guy alive, ignoring the absolute stench of the ruined camp, just to prove herself. She also handed over a secret book she'd found, written in a strange script she couldn't even read, so she had left it completely unopened. My worst fears were confirmed. Think about it, a traitor inside was helping them, setting up a massive base on our territory. Took serious planning. These scouts probably sneaked into Yuzhou, posing as traveling merchants, well before this war even started, and there is no way they stole these supplies. If military supply convoys were being targeted, the imperial court would have noticed. Someone was willingly handing over these goods. I opened the book and felt a cold chill. Even though my men were illiterate, their eyes were completely glued to it. I pocketed it, sending Lin Zishi to break the prisoner. She needed supply routes, along with their actual mission. Brutal screams soon echoed from the distance. I had Wang Dinglu lead me to the grain depot. A short walk led us to a hidden cave. You won't believe what was waiting inside. Endless rows of grain sacks, stacked high inside a massive underground cavern. Herds of sheep, horses, and tons of crates packed with military weapons. I sliced open a sack with my dagger, and pure white rice spilled out. Wang Dinglu tasted a grain, his face twisting with anger. This was premium high-grade rice, the type ordinary people could never afford. I quietly shared my dark suspicions. This was disaster relief. Rice from the treasury. And the armor was military issue. Someone high up, not a county official, had personally diverted these straight from the national reserves. This ledger confirmed the exact timeline. This rice had arrived just 2 months ago. Exactly. Right when the Fanling army deployed to Tianying. Everything pointed to a highly coordinated plan. Feed the barbarian raiders. Completely cut off our army's food lines. And starve them out. If the Fanling army fell, Tianying City falls next, leaving the entire Yuzhou region completely wide open. Wang Dinglu wanted to ride to Tianying City and report this shocking truth to the Fanling army. But I shut him down immediately. Who believes a bandit? Even with the account book as proof. Forgery is too easy. And whoever pulled these strings had enough power to plant spies deep inside the military. Wang Dinglu would get assassinated before ever reaching the general's tent. I told him to quietly inform everyone currently present that this ledger's existence must remain an absolute, total secret. Talkers would be killed. He had to do it privately, one by one. No loud announcements like last time. The brutal truth was crystal clear. Against enemies this powerful, pulling strings from the dark shadows, there was no safe way to deliver this intel to the famous female commander of the Fanling army. Not yet. I saw the bigger picture. Clearly, this was brutal political infighting at the highest levels. Someone wanted the Fanling army wiped out, and they were fully willing to sacrifice millions of innocent Yuzhou civilians to do it. I couldn't stomach that cruelty, but rushing in blindly would get us killed. The Fanling army was absolutely massive. Losing these supplies alone wouldn't cripple them immediately. I was heading to Tianying City soon enough, and I could figure out how to contact them then. With that settled, it was time to divide the spoils. Just like our 70-30 agreement, I gave the Taiwanese extra food and livestock, since that was what they needed most. Then, both sides tended to their wounded. Thankfully, nobody died in the clash, and all injuries were pretty minor. Then, we went our separate ways. Look at this haul. The sheer volume of loot was staggering. Using army horses, ox carts, and every single worker Lin Zishi had. It still took 3 whole days of heavy hauling to get everything back to Saiwa village. The Mu sisters definitely had the hardest job of all, cataloging every single item the second it arrived, before anything could go into storage. Wen Din finally presented me with the final inventory. 43 horses, 340 sheep, 48 pigs and 14 cattle, 480 stone of premium rice, 700 stone of mixed grain, 45 of dried meat, 1,070 weapon and armor sets. Wen Xin's records were incredibly meticulous. She'd even noted down the condition of each weapon, along with the health of every animal. I was seriously impressed, but here's the catch. Every single weapon and suit of armor bore Great Liang Dynasty markings, meaning I couldn't just hand them directly out to my people without raising some dangerous questions. Everything had to be melted down and completely reforged. Luckily, Zhang Tianchui's smithy was nearly finished, so reforging could start pretty soon and wrap up well before the new year. Still, I couldn't predict what this winter or spring would bring, so I sat thinking until I noticed Wen Cheng standing there, waiting. I realized she just wanted praise, so I told her she'd done an excellent job. She really had become a pretty indispensable partner in managing everything. With the accounts settled and that massive haul locked down, I could feel my local influence growing stronger every day, but I knew I had to take better care of my health. Moving forward with so much on my plate, I absolutely could not let my body break down now, not with so much work ahead. Just a few days later, winter officially set in. Wu Santong arrived back from the south one freezing morning, bringing a massive supply of horse feed. Plus, get this even better, He dropped a heavy burlap sack right in front of me. I tore it open, and my face instantly lit up. 3 whole bags of pure saltpeter. Top-tier stuff, directly from those southern salt fields. And only 10 taels a bag, with this much stock. I finally had enough to manufacture a ton of gunpowder to last the whole winter. Santong kept pacing around my yard, standing proud with hands on his hips, definitely waiting for some praise. So I played along and gave him the credit he deserved. Then he tried digging for why I wanted all this saltpeter. I just told him it was to fight off barbarians. He actually suggested using poison would be way faster. I just smiled, saying every medicine is basically a poison. He figured it was some secret medical thing, nodding like he actually understood. But before he could pry further, Lin Xiaoxi came rushing in, completely breathless. Wang Dinglu had arrived, and it was a total emergency. He teamed up with a rival bandit group. They were actively trying to assassinate Wu Jian. Wang Dinglu said that Jiashan Chuan, inside a secret room at the back of the compound, and their supplies were running dry. It was only a matter of time before they fell, then passed out cold, blood still spilling from his mouth. I snapped back, help with what? Our tiny patrol team versus a whole bandit army. Dinglu into his own escort agency. I told him to stop stealing my potential recruits. I actually liked Wang Dinglu too. Loyalty like that is incredibly rare. I turned to Lin Zishi, can you ride? She blinked, yes. I grabbed a solid barbarian horse, a heavy saber from our looted gear, and tossed it over. She just stared in shock. Wu Santong jumped right in front of me. What do you gain from this? A death wish? Whatever made Wang Dinglu willing to die for Wu Jian proved that Wu Jian was worth saving. All of Tianwaishan would follow my lead. That alone makes this gamble worth it. Honestly, if not, we run. I am definitely not looking to throw my life away. I told him to go rest after his exhausting journey, and he was not letting me go alone. Shang Yu, if I ended up dead. Wu Santong, and for elite escorts. This rescue was partly testing her loyalty. Pretty strange. A man of fierce loyalty, no matter how I calculated it. Caught myself thinking like a villain, honestly. We reached the mountain quickly. Taiwan was a bloodbath, bodies everywhere. I counted at least 40 fresh corpses, spotless paths, now covered in blood. The stronghold's population was small to begin with. Very few could still be alive. I estimated the rebel force at maybe 30 men total. Spotted some movement near the hall, and waved everyone into a small side building. Inside, it was a complete mess, but totally empty, until I noticed gaps in the bed's wooden boards. Ripped them up to find a hidden cellar. A woman screamed from below. Lin Zhao jumped down without any hesitation, and after a brief scuffle, dragged out a young woman in her 20s. When asked her name, she said Rua. I nearly choked Rua. Seriously, what is she even doing here? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. I quickly told her my name. She recognized my name immediately. Wu Zhang had mentioned me, and Wang Dinglu called me a real hero, she told me. Wu Zhang and the rest were actually hiding inside a secret room, with its entrance hidden under a flower pot in the main hall, and its exit buried among rocks behind the building. But both ends were heavily guarded. I ordered her to stay hidden, promising we'd return after the rescue. Wu Santong asked if she was related to me, some long-lost relative. I told him that story was way too complicated. We quietly crept toward the main hall, staying extremely low. I'd taught everyone basic hand signals. During our ride, old signs from my mercenary days. Zero talking needed. I grabbed a patrolling guard from behind, clamping his mouth shut, while Lin Zishi slit his throat without hesitating. Clean work, time to split up. Lin Zishi took 2 men around the right, while Wu Santong led 2 others to the left, and I'd go through the front door entirely alone, to draw their focus for our 3-sided ambush. Slipping through the main door, and found myself standing face to face with Zhangshan. He stared at me for several seconds, frozen in shock. In those seconds, I scanned the entire hall. 5 archers were spread around Zhangshan, with 4 more men prying at the secret entrance. Near the flower pot, 10 enemies total, including Zhangshan. They barely outnumbered us, but in terms of combat skill, we completely outclassed them. The attack began. Zhangshan feared me. He knew what I'd done to the water fort. With just a handful of simple villagers, yet a moment of pure shock meant fear couldn't save him. He reached for his sword way too slow. My dagger flew first, splitting his hand in half. He shrieked, stumbling backward. 2 archers tried to assist him, but I was already closing in. My blade cut a bloodline across Zhangshan's chest, before they could even react. The men at the secret entrance heard the noise and charged straight at me with swords. Talk about perfect timing. Wu Santong and Lin Zishi crashed through the windows from both sides, cutting them off completely. I cleared my side in seconds. Two archers drop, taken out with just one strike each. Another guy swings at me, but I catch his wrist, pinning his arm down. I drive my blade into his chest, over and over, kick another down to the dirt. Then I slash his throat a few quick times. Classic mercenary style, efficient. One slash might not kill, but hitting them repeatedly guarantees they bleed out fast. The last archer watches his friends drop in terror, and his legs give out. There is Zhongshan, slumping down a pillar in a pool of his own blood. He weakly reaches out his good hand, begging for backup. That surviving archer screams and bolts. Calmly turning, clearing the hair from my eyes, I hurl my dagger. The blade buries itself deep in his neck. He takes a few shaky steps before dropping dead. 6 kills in seconds. Tell me that is not insanely impressive. Barely breathing against the pillar, I calmly tell him he should have run instead of fighting. Though honestly, I would have hunted him down anyway. I despise traitors. He twitches once and dies. Wiping my blade clean on his clothes, I look up. Looks like the others finished their fights too, though they took considerably longer to handle things. Against way fewer enemies, Lin Zishi and Wu Santong, they look pretty embarrassed. No time to waste. I ask about the secret entrance mechanism. Nobody knows, so I check the floor. A hollow sound. You know exactly what that means. Scanning the room, I spot a tiny detail. Just a dusty little flower pot with a fake plant. Neglected and dusty. I turn it. Underground gears rumble, and a dark tunnel opening slowly reveals itself in the floor. Lin Zishi grabs a torch and leads the way down. I watch her closely through all of this. Her performance was honestly quite impressive. Brave, decisive, highly skilled, not bad at all. We reach a stone chamber. Lin Zishi tosses a small pebble ahead to trigger any traps. Nothing. She extends the torch around the corner, and a sharp blade instantly slices it in half. She shouts out that we are from Sawa village, here to rescue them. Jai Shanchuan steps out cautiously, then breathes a sigh of relief recognizing us. He opens up the inner chamber. Weijong is lying on a stone bed inside, face white as paper, with a deep sword wound in his shoulder that has already been bandaged. 2 of Jai Shanchuan's loyal men stand there, keeping guard beside him. Weijong looks up at me with a pretty bitter smile. Brother Lu, how embarrassing for you to see me like this. His wound looks pretty bloody, but it is not life-threatening. Here's how we're doing this. His people will exit through the main hall entrance, while I head out through the back exit to deal with Jarang's forces at the rock pile. But Weijong protests. He warns that Jarang has joined Gaolu Peak, and now commands at least 20 highly skilled fighters. He wants to retreat and fight another day. I refuse. If we run now, Jarang will quickly figure out I was involved, and then he might target Saiwa village itself. Besides, this guy has been a huge headache since the barbarian raid. He is just too ambitious to be left alive. Jai Shanchuan comes with me just as Weijong ordered. We quickly reach the exit, trigger the mechanism, and the heavy stone door grinds open. Outside, Jarang is gloating, expecting only Wu Jiang's exhausted handful to stumble out. But then he sees me. Talk about instant regret. Pure panic. Every bad emotion hits him all at once. After a few frozen seconds, he turns and runs, smarter than Zhongshan at least. But it won't save him. I quickly unsling my crossbow. Lin Zishi, cover me. She draws her sword and immediately shields my flank. Jai Shanchuan roars, charging straight into the enemy with 2 blades. And Wu Santong immediately charged with the others right into the chaos. Steel clashed everywhere as blood sprayed. I lined up Jarang in my crossbow sight. That old fox knew my weapon and kept zigzagging like crazy. With a real sniper rifle, this fight would be done in a heartbeat, but this crossbow bolt travels slowly. I had to predict his very next move. Then I spotted a white horse tied up ahead. That was his getaway plan, so I just waited. He actually thought he outsmarted me. His smug grin widened every second I did not fire. He was almost at the horse now. Meanwhile, Lin Zishi was seriously struggling. 3 tough fighters had her completely pinned down, pushing her directly back toward me. She was barely even holding them off. I yelled for her to wait just a little longer. She gritted her teeth and kept fighting, like a fierce woman with absolutely nothing to lose, forcing them back for now. Jarang reached the horse and bent down to mount up. Perfect. I had already aimed low, expecting this, knowing he would lean forward. I squeezed the trigger. The bolt punched right through his shoulder, The brutal impact threw him forward, off his feet. Old fool, did you seriously think I was stupid? I laughed aloud and quickly switched to my dagger. And right here, a gap opens for Lin Zishi, and two enemies immediately rushed in from both sides. She could not dodge without leaving me completely exposed. So she took the hit, a sword cutting deep into her chest. She screamed, yet she kept fighting, trying hard to kick her attacker. Before her foot even landed, my own dagger had already buried itself in that bandit's body, and I told her she did great. Then I plunged into the crowd. The sound of my cold blade cutting through flesh filled the air, mixed with agonizing screams. I carved a path right through, and sprinted toward where Jiarang had fallen. Lin Zishi, bleeding pretty badly, ignored her painful wound and charged back into the fight. Helping Wu Santong's faction out, I rushed to Jiarang's location, but that slippery old bastard had already crawled off, following the trail of blood. Suddenly, I felt a flash of danger, a blade slicing at me from behind a rock. I just smirked, dodged, and shattered his wrist, sending his sword spinning away. Before he could blink, my boot smashed his jaw, launching him hard into a stone wall. The old codger collapsed to his knees, grunting as he tried to stand. Before Jiarang could even rise, my cold steel was already resting against his throat. I laid it out plain. His little coup made this whole thing way easier. Had he not turned traitor, I would have needed to invent some other excuse to execute him. He let out a bitter laugh, accepting his end. He croaked, I lost, do what you want. I raised my sword, but then, he begged, offering up a massive secret to save his own neck. He swore that Wujiang was way more dangerous than I thought. Saving him would only bring disaster right down on my head. When I demanded the actual details, he shut his mouth, demanding his freedom first. He warned me that Wujiang was no typical target. No simple outlaw constructs such massive, secret vaults, and Wujiang's daily actions had never matched the lifestyle of a common thief. He spoke of a concealed chest, containing every one of Wujiang's secrets. I kept him talking until I had bled him dry. Grunting, he ripped the arrow out of his shoulder and began limping weakly toward his horse, foolishly believing I was actually letting him live. I thrust my sword deep into his back. Shivering steel splintered his bones and crushed his spine. He collapsed, blood bubbling from his mouth, staring up with pure, hateful shock. He choked out, "You lied. You will pay for this." I just stepped closer, driving the steel through his ribs. I never once promised you anything, only that I would listen. That quick end was the only mercy they got. I twisted my blade and finished him. But the chaotic clash still raged. Lin Zishi was already completely exhausted. I dove right in, instantly taking out a bandit. This low-peak thug cornered her, but now I was in. It ended quickly. Every single strike of mine took a life. No flashy moves, just cold, efficient killing. When the chaos finally stopped, was painful but luckily not fatal, so he could recover with the nearby village doctor. But wait, Jiarang's warning kept bugging me. The next morning, I brought him hot porridge. I quietly reminded him of his promise. He went completely pale. He gasped that the secret was so massive, once known. My decision would depend entirely on what that secret was. This entire land belonged to another empire. Not just royal, the direct lineage. The Wei Emperor was deeply loved. People to rule their own territory. Now, a full century later, almost nobody even remembers the old kingdom. For those dreaming of restoring it, two powerful underground rebel groups formed. Wujiang knew joining them would make him a mere puppet, while the entire country burned in another civil war. A safe haven for Wei descendants, and their late leader had entrusted, right before dying. That explained Wang Dingliu's fierce, unwavering loyalty. It was not just personal devotion. Dynasties rise and fall. That is just natural order. Royal blood is really no different from anyone else. Loyal to a dead cause, but he told me more. They vanished as kids, their whereabouts totally unknown. If the rebels could not find Wujiang, those poor sisters would definitely become their tools instead. She noticed and asked what was wrong. "Make extra, I am eating too." She had been stewing in anger for days. Temper needed wearing down. She gently explained that I carried pretty heavy responsibilities. We couldn't afford to slip up. She knew the best thing we women could do was trust, and her sister fully supported her decision. Shanyu's fiery anger finally dimmed down. She mumbled she'd behave and listen from now on, partly furious. If anything ever happened to me, every single time I went out, instantly sensing that something was coming, leaving only the cold focus of a dangerous man, she stared at me like I was a total stranger, reminding me of who she was, tolerate her wild recklessness. She burst out laughing, playfully hitting my shoulders. I deliberately terrified her just to get her completely under my control, saying I used fear to take advantage. With one quick motion, I dislocated her shoulder, before she could even react with her other arm. Tears filled her eyes. You do not fight fair. I laid out the brutal truth without softening a thing. I had 4 clean chances to kill you. You would be dead 4 times over. He told her my combat style was brutally simple but lethal, that every single movement I made existed for one purpose only. See, I was not some ordinary fighter. Shio knew, you admitted defeat, and told her, and drawing a crooked turtle on her back, leaving them giggling all through lunch, create a secure future for myself, but between managing the carpentry workshop, recruiting extra labor from our neighbor, Shango village, boasting 300 or 400 able-bodied men, compared to our tiny 100-something population, leaving our people holding deep grudges, Shango's villagers had grown pretty jealous, while laying down groundwork for future expansion, forever, and he had run all our past deals with them. Tialal Ba was absolutely the perfect guy for this. Wait, I quickly noticed Tialal Ba was missing today. Was out cutting wood for its very first run, was recovering right now, inside Wang Chongshin's old compound, right next to Weijiang. Luckily, the forge was far enough that they had not. I figured those two were probably together by now. Until I got the full picture, they lacked enough bricks for walls. Packed with heavy muscle and only in his early 30s. He was at his absolute peak physical strength. He told me the forge could fire up tonight, with only him and 2 clueless apprentices. Progress was painfully slow. The local blacksmith knew some basics. After that, farming tools and axes. And those captured weapons are just cheap, low-grade iron anyway. They're better for simple tools than military blades. We already had those captured. Looked pretty disappointed at this mundane chore. I laughed and told him, his new apprentices. But check this, I pulled a blueprint from my coat. This isn't your basic chainmail, with all those gaps the regular army uses, just like the war armor of ancient emperors. The second he saw the design, those designs are way more complex than this armor. Honestly, there was no better motivation. We shook on it. Motivating Zhang Taitsue was always part of my plan. A skilled blacksmith was simply invaluable now. I would be going to Tianyan City soon. And you know I had to prepare if the city fell. Needs at least 20 to 30 days to forge it. The city might survive, but if I failed, or honestly, even if I succeeded, that armor was going to be my personal lifeline. After finishing with Zhang Taitsue, it might someday let me rally massive armies and reshape the world, but if he tries using me, I will kill him. To just 5 people, and all their supplies. They fled with nothing, so I went in alone. She and Weijiang were clearly very close. I smiled at her before entering Weijiang's room. I started by asking if he knew why Zhejiang rebelled, testing if he would be honest, who had founded Taiwan Nation after Weijiang took over, and tried to reform the gang into something legitimate. But Zhejiang resisted. He explained he wasn't his father's biological son. He hired tutors and sent Weijiang to study abroad. But Weijiang kept failing those exams, having studied strategy and tactics extensively. The barbarians were camped just 100 li away, which answered only to the emperor himself. Someone powerful wanted to weaken imperial authority, based on what Wang Dinglu had told me, letting the Fan Ling army die off. Their entire force is already fully upgraded. Even worse, 2 nearby villages. If we can keep those local horse farms safe, then we swoop right in to finish them off. That's 3 birds with 1 stone. Honestly, his brilliant plan matched my own thoughts exactly. A few civilians might suffer in the chaos. Mainly, Rehua cleaning up the courtyard. Weijiang just chuckled, calling her his adopted sister. Nothing more, since he saved her from bandits years ago. Free to leave. He had been searching for someone for years. Weijiang quickly called her over, explaining that she had a childhood sweetheart back home, still out there searching. Get this, she had no idea he was right here. Groaning dramatically, rushing back inside with his medicine, frantic, with his hammer still in hand, who slept in graveyards during missions. He pushed open the door and froze. And right there time completely stops. Years of believing with absolute certainty the other was dead, all gone in a single second. Unable to say anything at all, I quickly pulled Weijiang outside to give them space, knocking their foreheads against the ground over and over. Zhang Tianshui declared I was their true savior. In 3 days, with Weijiang and me, we agreed to everything right away. That same day, Ruhua moved into Zhang Tianshui's home. Or maybe the crazy energy from his wedding night. duck, fish, and meat. Saiwa village prosper with growing frustration. When Tiao Buzz shouting dragged me outside. Standing right there in my front yard, stood 14 families from Shango village, clutching all their belongings, holding tight to their land deeds. For good. In this era, there was no official government registry. You just settled wherever you could survive. These folks weren't stupid. They knew safety cost something, so they brought out those deeds. As entry tickets, I spoke honestly. Those Shango land deeds were useless to me. Saiwa village had plenty of open space, while the Moose sisters set up a registration table. I promised a completely fair deal. They'd get matching value in homes. But I gave them one rule: I will feed you. But betrayal gets you killed. And honestly, this worked perfectly for my bigger plans. By taking those Shango deeds, I was setting the perfect stage to swallow their entire village, merge both towns with the wild mountains, and I'd basically become a sovereign lord. Right then Lin Chaoshi arrived with her patrol team, her arm, yet she was still training her guards every single day. He was actually pretty impressed, but he still couldn't quite trust her. Protecting the boss is just basic guard duty, had been moved off of kitchen duties, guided by him. They already took apart the barbarian leather armor. That was captured, creating a new prototype. This followed his custom new redesign, interlocking panels, while perfectly fitting the body's natural shape. He even improved the wrist guards, without losing a single bit of defense, stitched tightly for durability. A quiet, dark-skinned, when they walk in, a reward for taking that blade meant for him. High-quality armor was almost impossible to find. For regular civilians, even the county garrison, only captains and elite officers ever qualified. She tried to refuse, saying it was way too valuable, but her eyes betrayed how badly she wanted it. I ordered her to try it on over her full suit. Those overlapping plates let out a sharp clink. It made her already powerful build look quite terrifying. Honestly, I was pretty thrilled. For a mere prototype, Wang Dinglu would get outfitted, along with my entire inner circle, in custom leather. My ultimate armor would take time, so I needed temporary leather gear to hold me over. Lin Zishi thanked me and marched off, practically beaming as she left. Zmi approached, her face burning a deep red. She handed over a tightly wrapped package, another custom piece I had requested. The craftsmanship was superb. I praised her for the brilliant work. This woman's incredible craftsmanship thoroughly impressed me. Her needlework far surpassed the other villagers. I handed Zmi some copper coins as a bonus, and hurried right home with it. I designed a little something special for the Moose sisters, a completely new style of undergarment, borrowing modern concepts straight from my past life. In this era, women only wore simple wraps or basic bodices, so I sketched proper fitted clothing, ordering the workshop women, so them to fit my wife's exact measurements. The sisters blushed, completely mortified, once they finally realized exactly what they were, insisting that I leave immediately, since old traditions deemed such intimate wear bad luck for men to touch. But I laughed. I literally designed the things, and personally helped them try everything on. And man, those results did not disappoint. I quickly took mental notes to design more. That afternoon, the Shango refugees finished settling in. They exchanged their old deeds for houses inside Saiwa village, converting their leftover funds into survival grain. Crucially, I withheld any actual farmland, to keep them fully dependent on me for survival, generous enough to buy loyalty, while maintaining control. A strategic move to maintain control. Once the dust settled, I counted up every single empty house left. These 17 new families fixed our labor issue for now. But when spring comes with massive fields, we will need more. I had to keep recruiting all winter. These families, absolutely perfect. Anyone still holding onto their land deeds during a crisis had to be decent, hard-working folks. The lazy ones would have gambled it away. And families with wives and kids are easiest to manage. They simply had too much to lose. A few peaceful days went by before Mu Xiaoyan arrived for his usual constable shift. He brought heavy news. Exactly what Wu Zhang predicted. Galyu Peak bandits hit the nearest horse farm. They slaughtered the guards and took over 200 war horses. Desperate refugees were also being absorbed, fleeing Ninjo, growing their army to 200 men. No nearby county stood a chance of stopping them anymore. Terrified reports were sent to the prefecture, pleading with the Fanling army to help. But in Taeyang, the military garrison was stretched ridiculously thin. Just 5,000 troops faced 50,000 barbarians across the border. They could not spare one single soldier. to chase bandits. The Empire's finest troops were stuck behind walls, scared that moving would let the barbarians surround them. As we spoke, Mu Xiaoyang calmly drank tea, detailing the brutal reality of our defense force. Honestly, you'll be shocked too. The elite Fanling army had only 5,000 men. He explained that the emperor relied on just two armies, both the Fanling and Iron Armor armies. The Iron Armor unit had around 10,000 heavy troops, protecting the capital, but the Fanling army's insane selection process kept their numbers capped at 5,000. For a mighty empire's ruler, having under 20,000 loyal soldiers was dangerously thin, Mu Xiaoyang warned. Our best hope was that the barbarians would retreat once heavy snow fell, but I knew better. Usually, barbarian invasions struck in autumn, retreating right before winter, since their supplies could not sustain a long war. Their alliance of 18 major tribes and dozens of smaller clans under their great Khan meant fractured command and zero farming. But everything had changed. That supply base we destroyed proved someone inside the empire was feeding the enemy, keeping them fully provisioned. They could easily outlast our Fanling army forever. Our only choices? Either expose those filthy traitors, or the Fanling army, to crush the invaders before winter sets in fully. Neither option was easy. Then, Mu Xiaoyang changed the subject, asking about the upcoming Great Snow Festival. Since he knew I was traveling to Tanyu City for the martial tournament, he asked if I was ready, laughing that a highly capable and strong warrior like me deserved many wives. I laughed, knowing his own wife, the butcher's fierce daughter, was in absolute terror. Who would skin him for even thinking of concubines? I told him the arena did not worry me. Then, he leaned in close, whispering, to ask about his sister's childhood friend. The match they wanted for me, I had completely forgotten. According to Mu Xiaoyang, this woman was extraordinary. Her father was the garrison commander of Jiayang City, and her two brothers were high-ranking elite officers in the Fanling army, holding 4th-grade ranks or higher. He insisted that if I could win her heart, my path to absolute power would be easily paved. Then came his real, cheeky warning. Don't forget your poor relatives once you make it big. I laugh, but I definitely note it down. These two lovely wives of mine, they have ties to serious military power, and they kept me completely in the dark. Once Mu Xiaoyang heads out to the farm, I pull Wen Cheng onto my lap and ask her about that friend's letter. She squirms, finally admitting it. This girl actually agreed to meet during the big festival, but she has 3 strict conditions before any wedding, even though she keeps them a secret. When I demand to see the page, Wen Xin blushes bright red, swearing she accidentally burned the thing. Let's be real, she is hiding something, probably some pretty harsh words about me. A little teasing, and she finally hands it over. It starts with, "Dear sisters, I have absolutely no desire to marry, but since you keep hyping up your husband, I will meet him. Once I return for the Great Snow Festival, we can talk." Signed Zishan. The handwriting is stunning, elegant, but packed with intense, disciplined grace, the style of a true calligraphy master. Every line screams power. She was definitely raised in a very proud, strict military home, a lady of real substance. The girls already told me, her full name is Linghu Chaoshan. Brothers like Linghu Chongshan and Linghu Yuanshan, their prominent clan was originally from an ethnic minority background, fully integrated into classic Han culture, raising highly decorated military officers for generations. Seriously powerful allies. Things stay quiet, for now. I inspect my workshops, hang out with my wives, and enjoy life. Then, I ride out early one morning to check on my new Shango properties, before finally heading to the horse farm. Tia Laoba met me with some great news. Several mares were pregnant now. My stallion Wuju had been busy. That horse was a total beast. Jealous of Wuzhong's chestnut mare getting better feed, he constantly tried kicking her. Though smaller than those purebred Great Leap horses, Wuju fathered almost every single one. Whenever I rode him around the farm, he strutted and neighed at the other stallions, just like a bully showing off his master's favor. Then Cao Cao rushed to find me, looking incredibly tense. She brought up the Han prisoner we had captured at the barbarian camp, the one she had been interrogating for weeks. He finally broke, so I galloped over immediately. The man was completely broken down now. There he sat, eating roast chicken and drinking wine. His reward for talking. Lin Zishi handed over several pages of his written testimony, casually claiming she couldn't read. I didn't buy that for a second. She was just playing dumb on purpose, to avoid knowing dangerous secrets. I read through the confession, line by line. My blood ran cold. Can you blame me? I handed the pages right back to Lindsay. She burned these immediately. She looked absolutely shocked. She had spent half a month extracting this information, but I was deadly serious. I ordered her to execute the prisoner, leave zero trace, and personally watch everyone involved in the entire interrogation. If a single one of them talks, they die too. The mastermind behind the barbarian supply lines was one of the Great Leap Dynasty's 8 grand eunuchs, remnants of the old emperor's inner circle, whom the new emperor wanted wiped out, but couldn't touch. Yet these weren't simple palace servants. In the Great Leap system, the grand eunuchs held absolutely massive power, capable of manipulating the entire court. How was I even supposed to fight that? My target stood just a single step below the throne, and here I was, a village chief playing with mud. Seriously, it was like bringing a stick to fight a god. I rode straight back to the smithy, my expression pretty grim. Zhang Yizhou was busy working on my ultimate armor. I asked how much molten iron he had ready to go. For nearly half an hour, he couldn't grasp what these tiny things were even for. I packed it tight with iron pellets and nails, little metal pieces, so whenever he had some spare time, I had to prepare for the absolute worst. I needed weapons. We're talking weapons that completely rewrite the rules here. I went back home to pack it with gunpowder. In this era, walking into Taeyong City would make me look completely insane. The blast radius easily exceeded 50 meters, giving them duties for while I was away. We grabbed an inn and rested. The city was totally alive with festival preparations, lanterns and decorations. A wife's look reflects her husband standing. The sisters had never seen a city this grand. They were completely giddy, buying small gifts for everyone back home. I was literally drowning in bags. We barely settled back at the inn, but get this. Heavy knocks suddenly rattled our door. Elite foaming army soldiers, hunting for spies. Their sergeant questioned why we were here. He almost said something more. Stationed alongside the Linghu family garrison, but I knew the real threat came from traitors, already inside, and no normal search would expose a grand eunuch, dressed to perfection, fuming that I was still in bed, demanding to know why I was not taking this seriously. Honestly, how she even tracked us down is beyond me. On the main street, since word spread months ago, just 6 of us remained, who had been granted direct entry to the finals. Extremely skilled, yet obsessed with Shang Yu's beauty. The rules, simple enough. Before he could even finish, he smirked and admitted he bet heavy on me. The old fox wanted to get rich off my fists. I leapt onto the platform. Long Ziyun stepped up and calmly beckoned him. The giant roared and charged like a human tank, followed by a rapid flurry. A second challenger stepped up. This one had some actual martial arts background, and a pretty dangerous look, but against a man who earned his rank through real military combat. Long's Shaolin strikes were deceptively simple. Zheng Renzi smirked before stepping onto the stage. As a prefect's son, he wanted to defeat Long Ziyun, purely to show dominance. Long Xiaoyun's face immediately tightened. He instantly knew that level of body control was insane. He quickly shifted into an attack stance. I just looked down at Zhang Renzi. He growled, unleashing a devastating strike. But Long Xiaoyun was no soft, pampered noble. He earned his rank through brutal years of actual up on the VIP viewing deck, and crushed Tia Weiken's rebellion single-handedly. Long Xiaoyun's punch came with some serious power. That was the trap. The exact millisecond his fist arrived, I swatted it aside. He crashed down, never even realizing what hit him. From below, Zhang Renzi watched with laser focus. This arrogant clown actually convinced himself I was a nobody, boasting that he could easily end me in 3 moves. He stepped onto the stage to massive, excited chatter. Turns out, he paid fake shells. Shang Yu couldn't stand this anymore. Even crippling him was totally acceptable. Then I sent her back to her seat. Zhang Renzi's face turned completely murderous. Seeing her worrying about another guy drove him into a blind rage, super threatening in his own mind. Honestly, it was just comical. He attacks with everything, treating him like some performing monkey. His fury doubled, and he went low, sweeping at my legs while I lifted one foot, pinning him down into a forced kneel. His bones literally creaked under the pressure. He tried a desperate elbow strike, but I spotted the opening, grabbed his arm and instantly dislocated his shoulder, then reached for his waist with his good hand. A folding fan, he flicked it wide open, and launched a hidden blade right at my throat. Oh, so he wants to play dirty, fine. He spat out blood along with the teeth. He howled that he would kill me. As he locked eyes with me, He finally saw my expression had gone ice cold, staring down at him like he was absolute trash. But Shanyu ordered me to break him completely. My original plan was just to dislocate his joints. But that cheap hidden blade, or his powerful dad, and panic flooded his eyes. He shrieked, demanding to use real weapons. A loose, splintered plank shot straight up, catching him dead between the legs. I calmly walked over. Instead, he lunged, wrapping both hands around my neck. We all know some fools just refuse to stay alive. I snatched his wrist right midair. They quickly scrambled to carry him off for treatment. The prefect's son. If he died on stage, that would mean serious trouble. But as for Shinyue, the announcer then called for more challengers. Demolished, absolutely nobody wanted to be next, wondering where this terrifying stranger had come from. Then, what are you all doing? You have time for games but not for fighting the enemy. A tall, 50-something man strides through the crowd, commanding. His hand rests on the sword at his hip. Behind him, bowing and praising him as their one true protector against the barbarians. So this was the mighty garrison commander. He orders everyone to disperse immediately. Raiders being active lately, he had watched me handle Jongrenzi. The old general blinks when Din shyly introduces me as their husband, a true equal. As fast as he had arrived, Shanyu asked if we still had to fight, before she could even reply. And now I was carrying away a third. You can practically hear the single guys crying inside. Pure jealousy. The very second we got back home, so formalities were kept minimal. Early the next morning, the place was absolutely huge. Bright crimson roof tiles, and a massive golden plaque hanging above the gate. Armed soldiers stood guard at every turn. Local civilians actually loved the Linghu family. Even with the barbarian army camped 50 li away, the people here showed absolutely zero panic. They celebrated the festival quite freely, because they fully trusted General Linghu. Women, while sizing me up with approving nods. The estate was pretty quiet compared to the busy streets. We were led to a small courtyard. The sisters had explained their deep family connection, almost joining the capital's prestigious Imperial Medical Bureau. They stayed close even after Linghu Jiang became the powerful garrison commander of Tianyang City. Separated by distance, honestly, she was the most stunning woman I had ever seen. She looked up as we entered. Linghu Xiaoxian called out to the sisters quite warmly, before her gaze slowly settled on me. The sharp weight of someone used to giving orders. Definitely not the look of some sheltered. The three women quickly steered the conversation toward testing me, almost like they had rehearsed it. Xiaoxian mentioned her father highly praised my fighting, and said. I shifted the focus, then stopped cold, realizing she had said way too much. I do not think so, I countered. I am 9/10 sure they will attack in spring. She was not important enough to know. The sisters quickly jumped in to smooth things over. Xiaoxian demanded to know who I thought was actually qualified to hear this intel. I told her only the Fanling Army's commander could easily doom everything. For legendary vice commanders named Wind, I would love to fight those generals someday. That is not difficult at all. With just for words, she laid everything bare. An ordinary girl wouldn't speak so casually about. With the Empire's highest-ranking commanders, fielded my combat questions, having two brothers as senior Fanling officers, and a father leading the whole garrison, made it effortless for her to serve in the military. You simply do not negotiate state secrets. Now, she agrees, was she trying to worm her way in for top intel? Never interfered with her personal choices. And trust me, the surprises weren't over yet. Two imposing figures clad in heavy armor strode in. Her big brothers, Linghu Chongshan, Linghu Yuanshan, the younger brother, built broad and stocky with a laid-back vibe. But they both walked with. These two heavyweights crashed in with zero manners. Their old man bragged about my insane combat skills. As they challenged me, Zishan stomped her foot and commanded them to get back to base immediately. He is here to see General Nangong. Meeting the Grand General. Wonderful. Zishan glared at them in silence, calling them idiots for talking too much. Since the first possessed classified military intelligence, they cheerfully agreed, totally oblivious to how many military secrets. I left the Mu sisters back at the estate, and followed the two brothers out. They insisted on taking a carriage instead of horses, but get this, it was suspiciously slow. Along the way, they asked about the marriage. When I mentioned that Zishan had agreed, the elder brother slapped his thigh with pure delight. They warned me their sister was difficult to handle. I told them I had my own methods. I had it all figured out. Zishan was in the Fanling army. Marrying her meant she would be away constantly. maybe only seeing me once every few years. She likely just wanted the formal status of being married to me. It was still a completely perfect deal. A gorgeous wife, powerful military connections, plus complete freedom. That carriage crawled along so slowly. Turns out, it was totally deliberate, giving someone time to get into position ahead of us. When we finally arrived at the military camp, I caught a figure darting through the gates. Just before we stepped outside, the Fanling army camp was immaculate. Every single tent precisely placed. Every soldier looked sharp-eyed and confident. These were not conscripts grabbed off the street. Each one had been handpicked from across the entire empire's armies. The camp was divided into 4 sections, spread around a central command tent, each led by one of the 4 vice commanders. General Long led the cavalry units, riding under the wind banner. Those twin-headed storm wolves. Honestly, I almost laughed at the design. General Longrue stood over a battle map. He asked who I was and what I wanted. I had crippled John Rinzi during the martial tournament. Longrue's eyes lit up instantly. He immediately offered me a position as captain in the Fanling army. I politely thanked him. Commander Nangong herself. That could only be shared with her directly. Demanding to meet with the Supreme Commander directly and going over him was pretty unusual. Standard protocol meant whoever recruited you first claimed you as their own subordinate. Someone had obviously run ahead to prepare. A soldier suddenly rushed inside carrying urgent orders. General Long, the Grand General demands your presence immediately. Let's go. I'll consider you a friend. We're already waiting outside the main headquarters. The 4 vice commanders walked in first. After a tense moment, come on inside. Completely blocking any view of the inner chamber, Fire and Mountain stood guarding the screen's only narrow gap. A brand new screen, clearly never set up before. This trap couldn't have been more transparent. I asked where the Grand General was hiding. Long Ru answered completely robotically, saying the general was behind that screen. Clearly rehearsed, so I refused. And just call it the Grand General. Sounding slightly altered, insolent fool. Drag him out and give him 20 military lashes. The giant general stepped forward. Boo, the mountain guardian of formations, reaching for me with genuine menace. His hand just hovered there, 20 lashes. He turned back to the screen, confused. She had disguised her voice, Shashin earlier to easily recognize her. Instantly, pure chaos erupted. Imagine that, the 4 generals just staring in utter disbelief. A teacup, clearly knocked over by a nervous hand. Her voice cracked with embarrassment. The generals quickly parted, and behind that screen sat Ling Hu Shaoshan. Except her red cloak was swapped for a black one. Tea dripped slowly off the table. She demanded that I speak, but I shook my head. She was just my future concubine. Unless she personally confirmed her identity, no way I'd share anything. The 4 generals nearly choked. Their legendary leader had just been called some guy's concubine. Zishan glared with pure murder. Then she stayed dead silent for a while. I took control. You are testing me. Her eyes cleared up completely. No rage, no embarrassment. Now that is Nangong Shushuai. The emperor named you after the clear autumn water. Still and completely undisturbed, she looked at me with a brand new expression. Not hatred, respect. I started my briefing. Those barbarians should have retreated weeks ago, due to lacking supplies. And yet, their army of 50,000 camped here for 2 months, meat and wine flowing nonstop. Someone was keeping them fed. Jibu, the mountain general famous for his sharp mind, instantly understood the real implication. The barbarians surviving out there without any supply issues pointed to one thing. A traitor among us was feeding them. Crazy, right? Jibu, the mountain commander, running all their intelligence and defense, admitted they had suspected it, but couldn't verify the scale of their supplies, since refugee reports of raided towns were unreliable. John Limei, the forest general leading the archers, and acting as their chief strategist, asked me what I knew. I pulled the heavy account book from inside my coat. Most people didn't realize it yet, but barbarian camps had quietly spread all over Yizhou. I personally led the raid that completely destroyed 200 elite soldiers, along with massive piles of imperial supplies. Every detail is recorded in this ledger. 3 of the 4 generals refused to believe it, but the cold facts hit Long Ru hardest. He managed the Fanling army's entire supply line. If barbarian raiders were positioned to cut off his supply lines, and he didn't know, his head would be the first to roll. Then, I laid out my analysis. These bases had full infrastructure, built for long-term habitation, established at least 6 months ago. The barbarians had infiltrated Yujo in small groups. Over time, backed by dirty traders within the imperial court, just one camp held enough supplies to feed tens of thousands. I estimated at least 10 such bases, scattered across the province. The generals passed the account book around. When it returned to Zishan, she exchanged a knowing look with Zhang Lianmei. His earlier theory about Wei Kingdom remnants was completely dead on. Watch as he spills out their trap. If the Fangling army sent troops to hunt these hidden camps, Taeyang City would be left defenseless. But if they ignored them, the raiders would eventually strangle their supply lines. Either way, they'd lose. Zishan cut through the despair with a cold voice and turned to me. You brought this account book because you already have a solution. If this were truly hopeless, you wouldn't have bothered coming. So tell us. I smiled. She was sharp. I do have a plan. But information like this requires fair exchange. She offered anything, even official rank, silver imperial commendations. I just shook my head. What I really want is a monopoly on salt and iron, plus permission from the emperor to raise a private army, a fiefdom where I hold absolute authority over everything. Within its borders, the tent went dead silent. I was asking for the economic lifeblood of the entire nation. You? How dare you? Zishan's eyes blazed, though I caught admiration hiding behind her anger. I laughed. Relax. I don't actually need those rewards to share my plan, but I do need one thing from you. What scheme are you plotting now? Simple. First, admit that I'm your chosen husband. Once you do, I'm just helping my own woman. Perfectly reasonable. Her face cycled through fury, shock, and finally settled on a deep blush. Seriously, inside that tent, you could hear every breath. Her handmaid was covering her mouth, trying hard not to laugh. The 4 generals stared at me like I was some alien creature. No one in the history of the Fangling army had ever dared tease the Grand General like this, let alone multiple times in a single meeting. Long Ru's expression said it all. This guy is either the absolute bravest, or the craziest person alive. All 4 generals turned to watch Zishan, honestly, just waiting for the next blow-up. Zishan thought for a long time, before answering carefully. You are Linghu Zishan's husband. I've already agreed to that. But this has nothing to do with Nangong Shishuai. She was literally splitting herself into 2 identities. I looked past her at the armor stand. A stunning set of custom-fitted female battle armor, complete with a blue cape, and a thin face mask that would cover everything, except her eyes. When she wore that mask, she was Nangong Kishui, the invincible general. Without it, she could just be my wife. I understood immediately. Nangong Kishui couldn't die. Forbidden to marry, never truly human. She was far larger than one individual. The emperor was incredibly brilliant. I pointed out how those barbarians always mocked our forces, so he deliberately forged a female war goddess, proving to the world that, if even our women are this terrifying, then imagine what our men can do. Nangong Kishui is no simple name. It is an ideal, a symbol. Linghu Chaoshan is simply the vessel who carries that symbol. Her mouth fell wide open. Every word I said slammed into her like a hammer. The emperor himself had said those exact words to her. When giving her that very name, how could this nobody of a village chief see the emperor's true, deepest intentions? So effortlessly, I added what the emperor dared not say aloud. This entire play was about pure control and balance. Typical high-stakes imperial politics. She stared at me, her eyes filled with that look, reserved only for the emperor, suddenly realizing that someone could read her so easily. Then I switched topics. Are there any pending bandit suppression requests? Bu, our mountain general, confirmed. They had received multiple requests regarding Gaolu Peak, but had ignored them all. In Bu, the fire general leading shock troops protested that hunting bandits was not their job, with 50,000 barbarians waiting outside. Look, I do not want you fighting bandits. I said, I want you to do nothing. I explained that Gaolu Peak had stolen military horses after taking weapons directly from the barbarian camp. All other bandit groups across the region were closely watching the Fangling army's response. If they stayed totally passive, every bandit gang would imitate Gaolu Peak, fighting among themselves and raiding the barbarian supply camps to loot their hidden stockpiles. Those barbarian bases will actually get destroyed by local outlaws rather than the Empire's soldiers. Once those bandits exhaust themselves, fighting barbarians and each other too, the Fangling army's 8 top lieutenant generals can easily sweep them up without effort. The bandit menace and that barbarian infiltration issue. Look, Both massive threats will solve themselves. The key is that Gaolu Peak's horse-stealing success will inspire other gangs to copy them. Their greed becomes your greatest weapon. I paused, because sadly, some innocent civilians near Taeyong City will suffer in the brutal crossfire. Zishan's face shows total shock. She'd commanded massive armies for years, and never once considered using bandits as blind pawns against an invading enemy. My plan is quite devious, ruthless, and highly effective. The four generals immediately straighten up once I mentioned their role, wiping out those weakened bandits. No matter what they think of me, they are pure soldiers. Give them a fight and they are completely happy. Zishan makes the decision without any hesitation. She immediately orders the four generals to spread word of Gaolu Peak's success, baiting all remaining bandit groups, pull back all active scouts, to focus strictly on catching barbarian informants lurking inside the city, while tightening patrols all over Ganyu City. The generals salute together in unison and readily acknowledge their orders. Then, she turns toward me. If this actually works, you get the top merit, regardless of whether you want rewards. I'll report everything directly to the Emperor. After this campaign, the Fonling army rewards people fairly. She then dismisses everyone, ordering Long Ru to quickly prepare a carriage back to the estate. A minute later, we are riding alone inside the carriage. Just the two of us, but the driver doesn't head home. Instead, he detours through the busy central streets. She set this up deliberately, just wanting some quiet time to read me. After I had easily run circles around her back in the command tent, we just sat there, facing each other in complete silence. Locked eyes, neither of us willing to look away first. Finally, she broke. "Why do you keep staring at me?" "Because you are beautiful." She blinked, her long eyelashes fluttering. "Is that the only reason you actually want to marry me?" "Just my looks." "You are gorgeous," I said. Then, I listed her other fine qualities with absolute sincerity. Her figure, peak physical fitness from years of military training, that raw stamina that would easily surpass all my other wives. Zero holding back, her eyes went wide. Her brain completely short-circuited inside that cramped carriage. Our knees kept brushing, and when I bluntly mentioned her being built for bearing sons, I felt her legs automatically clamp tight against mine. Before she caught herself, "You are absolutely vulgar, a total scoundrel." She managed to sputter. She yanked the curtain open, ordering the driver straight home. I just kept admiring her silhouette. Those curves were honestly pretty impressive. She could definitely feel my gaze traveling over her, turning bright crimson, probably wishing she could kill me. But wait, beneath that embarrassment, I caught something else. She was actually relaxing. Every other suitor who had visited the Linghu estate only wanted her immense power and connections, her grand status. They always saw the general first, and the woman second. But I was the opposite. I honestly did not care about any of that stuff. I would build my own power and my own wealth, my own position. From her, I wanted nothing but herself. She was sharp enough to realize that, and it completely disarmed her defenses. Arriving at the estate, she practically fled from the carriage. I strolled right in after her, grinning. The sisters immediately greeted me with sweet calls of husband, basically holding themselves back from jumping straight into my arms, right in front of everyone. See, General Linghu had been chatting with them, squeezing out every bit of secret information about my past. He even sent messengers to ask their father directly, who gave me glowing reviews. Just watching his furious daughter storm right on past, all red-faced, while I just strolled behind, laughing with his boys, the old general smiled. His eyes said it all. This wedding is happening. Turns out, the general already knew about the proposal, ever since the sisters sent their letter. So yeah, no wonder his whole attitude shifted so fast. During the arena fights yesterday, he saw how I fought and got his answer. Clean and ruthless. A highly dangerous enemy, but a pretty perfect son-in-law. He casually suggests his two sons spar with me, to learn a few things. The brothers exchange a silent, knowing look. They knew Dad was testing me through them. Refusing would be a huge insult to them. So I put down my tea and head out to the yard. 3 moves in, and the older brother is eating dirt. Zishan watches the fight with a tight frown. The general is totally unbothered. He saw this coming, so, "What do you think of Lu Fan?" Asking his daughter. "He is a total scoundrel." She snaps instantly. "And the marriage?" I agree. Wait, did she really just say that? She looks completely shocked by her own answer, turning bright red while glancing at the sisters, who are grinning as she tries to recover, claiming she has 3 strict conditions. Outside, The younger brother gets wrecked just as easily. Zishan tries to grab her sword and challenge me herself, but her father quickly holds her back. He is absolutely not about to let her scare off the only guy she ever actually accepted. Sit down, if you want to marry him. Let us settle this, then you can fight him all you want. Zishan reluctantly sits down. She laid out 3 strict rules. First, her secret identity. As non-Gonchushu I had to stay hidden. Second, she would be away fighting campaigns constantly, meaning she could not do wifely duties, or bear children like normal, and I was never allowed to resent her. Third, her military camp was strictly off limits, unless some urgent business popped up. Even then, I must ask her brothers. Talk about pretty brutal terms. The whole yard froze. I calmly sipped my tea, then smiled. Absolutely not. Everyone stared in shock. All 3 demands rejected. I will respect the first one, since it is actually important, but you do not get to boss me around. You want rules, let us see whose fists are bigger first. She was already quite furious about everything anyway. My rejection, my sheer arrogance, this total disregard for her authority. She instantly drew her sword. I have been dying to teach you a lesson. Then let us make this interesting. I added, if I win this, giving me my own 3 demands. She paused, then scoffed. Cheapskate, but you will never beat me. Her brother quickly tossed me his sword. I achieved it halfway, laughed, and threw it back, pulling out my own dagger instead. Every member of the Linghu family froze. She held a massive full-length sword. A tiny dagger versus that giant blade. Talk about insane. She warned me not to handicap myself, but I told her I was way more comfortable fighting women with my other weapon, a dirty joke that flew over most heads. She lunged forward with legendary swordplay, blazing fast, strike after strike, but I blocked everything with just my dagger. Sparks exploded with every single clash, yet not a single strike could get through. Her relentless flurry of blade work, completely stopped by a few inches of steel. I pressed forward, driving my dagger in, forcing Zishan to back up step by step. Her brothers think she's just going easy on me, but her father sees the real truth. His daughter is barely fighting at 60%, and she still looks like a struggling child. Desperate, she lunges forward with a wild thrust. I sidestep, flipping my dagger to deflect her blade upward, and instantly disarm her with a sharp wrist strike. As the momentum sends her stumbling right into me, my left arm catches her waist, while my right, completely hidden from view, accidentally touches a place it really shouldn't have. Her mind goes blank, and she spins around, her face burning with murderous fury. Had enough, I smirk. She shoves me away and storms back to the pavilion. Everyone just assumes she is upset about losing, and somehow, absolutely nobody else noticed. She sits down, demanding I name my 3 conditions right now, fully prepared to reject whatever comes next. Haven't thought of them yet. I'll let you know after our wedding. She looks ready to rip me to shreds. She had all her defenses ready, but I gave her absolutely nothing to fight. Her elder brother quickly smooths things over, while General Linghu asks about my past. Learning both of my parents are gone, he takes charge, saying once the barbarians retreat and peace returns to Taeyong City, they will host a proper wedding. Zishan instantly protests that it's too fast, claiming she wants more time with her family, but her father shuts that down. She barely visits 5 times a year anyway, so there's absolutely nothing to delay. I nod in silent agreement. Zishan has 0 ground left to stand on. Her father has decided. She's already consented, and the marriage is set. The general hosts a grand great snow festival dinner for us. Afterward, Zishan dragged me straight into her study for a mission. She wanted me to completely destroy Go Luo Peak. Those stolen war horses, they were painstakingly gathered from all across the empire for our Fongling army, so losing them to mere bandits, unacceptable. If word ever spread and they did absolutely nothing, their army's reputation would suffer. But it had to stay completely quiet, avoiding other bandits, or the grand plan of using bandits against barbarian camps would collapse. She added another complicated twist. Once other bandits grabbed those horses, during raids on barbarian camps, they could never be allowed to sell them, or use them to raise rebel armies. Fongling's army would take the blame. Honestly, that sounds quite tough, I admitted, but if it were easy, would I even ask you, she said, trying to block my demands by bringing up our engagement. Family never charges family. I laughed and clapped. Fair enough. Since we're family, and I am about to risk my entire life on this suicide mission. I will not ask for troops or supplies. Just one tiny favor, a kiss on my cheek. Surely my future wife won't reject something so simple. She sputtered, throwing out every insult she could find. But wait, notice how she never actually said no. Jishan absolutely cursed me out. But then she sighed. I could feel her warm breath drawing near, hearing her heartbeat race. Before she could even react, I pulled her close and kissed her properly. Slowly, she softened. She had never been kissed. She didn't even know to use her nose. The Mu sisters walked right in and caught us. Eyes wide, Zishan shrieked. The sisters laughed and each kissed me on the cheek. She will get used to it after a few more times. And began our journey home, stopping overnight back at our home village. Our home was warm. The heated bed platform had kept burning. Early next morning, I prepped every little detail for the wedding with Shang Hua. The Mu sisters rallied all the workshop women to clean up and decorate our compound. Word got out that their chief was marrying, but mostly, out of genuine love, dozens went hunting in the frozen mountains to bring back fresh game as gifts. All voluntary. 3 days later, the wedding procession departed for Wanwon County. I rode Wuju in a bright red wedding suit the sisters sewed. The sedan carriers, plus the full escort party. All volunteers. We arrived by evening, and I settled everyone in for the night. Next morning, the escort agency was absolutely packed, covered in lanterns and bright red banners. Crowds gathered. In these tough times, you know how rare a real celebration was then. I told Jie Shanchuan to toss copper coins. We prepared 5,000, not a fortune. I wouldn't let anyone criticize. The Wu family gave away their daughter pretty cheaply. Copper coins rained down as the crowd surged to grab them, clearing a path straight to the door. Inside, Wu Santong sat beaming in the main hall. I served him tea, keeping the Yujiao tradition, marking the formal bond between our families. Felt so right. Wu Zhang and Jai Shanchuan handled fetching the bride, while I managed the ceremony itself. Shang Yu waited inside the sedan chair behind her veil. Just local tradition. And honestly, not seeing her until the end was torture. Back home, once everything was finally done, I bowed to Wu Santong and his wife at the gate. Mounting Wuju, I gave the final order. Jai Shanchuan, toss the coins. Copper rain falling from the sky. It was like this all through the city streets. The heavy dowry wagons rolled behind us, with our escort agency guards protecting them. Excited townspeople followed the procession, cheering wildly until we finally passed the gates. Inside the quiet carriage, Shang Yu suddenly burst into tears. She finally realized that leaving the escort agency meant it wasn't her home, just her parents' house, her childhood place, but never truly hers again. The procession wound through the deep snow. We're back in Saiwa where everything is ready. Lanterns and red decorations covered our compound, guiding her inside while I welcomed Wu Santong and his wife to the main hall. Once she calmed down. Second, to her parents. Then husband and wife bowed to each other. The ceremony was finally complete. She was led away to the bridal chamber. While I hosted the lively banquet, villagers had brought mountains of gifts. The wild celebration went on until dark. Wu Santong and his crew finally headed back to town. When I finally walked into our room, holding the ceremonial rod to lift her veil, Shang Yue was shivering right on the bed's edge, hands clenched tight on her knees. Even her voice trembled as she called my name. I slowly raised the veil and saw her face. Tears had smudged her delicate makeup, making her look both fierce and deeply vulnerable, yet somehow beautiful. She stole one shy glance at me, before losing all her courage and looking down. But get this, despite her usually bold personality, her warrior family had never bothered to prepare her. And this rushed wedding left absolutely no time. The next morning, I woke up early. The Mu sisters had already brought hot water, and were quietly running the household. Her first night as a wife would surely leave her. I grabbed some breakfast and headed out. Now came the actual challenges at Gaolu Peak. The barbarian threat and all the rest. We're still waiting. But look closely. During last night's feast, I had noticed the Shango villagers eating desperately, even stuffing food into their clothes to take home. Their desperate behavior. Tia Lalba quickly confirmed my worst fears. Most families in Shango had completely run out of food, while some had already fled to Saiwa village. But the rest were suffering terribly. Frozen rivers, mountains sealed shut by snow, leaving nowhere to forage. And worse, the Shango village chief was exploiting this crisis. He was demanding that families hand over their daughters, selling them off as concubines for tiny grain loans. Little girls as young as 11. Tia Lao Ba could hardly stomach the absolute disgust. I just shake my head. What is actually wrong with these greedy chiefs? But Tia Lao Ba just smiles and tells me otherwise. Across 10 neighboring villages, everyone knows my name and respects what I have built. Our Saiwa village has food, warmth, and real paying jobs. Other places are incredibly jealous. No charity here. The villagers work for their wages, but by selling them cheap firewood and leftovers from the smithy for next to nothing. This keeps costs low and gives control. And yet, Saiwa is absolute paradise compared to the outside world. A plan starts forming. I order Tia Lao Ba to set up a brand new trading stall in Shango. My stockpiles are loaded with massive reserves, stacked with looted barbarian camp supplies. It is enough to feed Saiwa for a whole year, and our hunters keep bringing back premium game. We trade that south to Santong for even more rice. We load an ox cart with premium rice. I announce that we are trading for absolutely anything. Labor, goods. An old man desperately pushes to the front. He looks skeletal, wearing almost nothing in the freezing cold, dragging a terrified, trembling girl behind him. He begs, "Do you take daughters? Mine is 14. I would rather sell her to you than let our awful village chief ruin her life." He drops straight to his knees, begging. She is pretty, with a thin face, with delicate, hair-streaked features. And then, the floodgates open. Dozens of desperate parents drag their young daughters forward. They fell to their knees, begging for my help. Their hatred for the current chief ran deep. They'd literally rather sell their daughters to a stranger than let that monster touch them. Only 13 or 14 years. They were too young for mandatory state marriages. That kicked in once they grew up. Unable to pay taxes, they lost their daughters anyway. Sent to pleasure houses, married off by force or worse. Drafted into camps. Old Tian Lao Ba spoke up, noting we had single bachelor villagers. Decent future husbands. I nodded, staring at the old man's daughter. My own household setup needed help. When Dim was drowning, I needed a maid at minimum. My standards were clear. She had big, bright eyes, full of spirit. She couldn't read or do math. No poor family could afford education. But when I asked her if she was willing to work as my personal maid, both she and the old man froze in shock. I mean, who asks a servant that? As long as I can eat and have a place to sleep, I'll do anything. That simple line told me everything. Clever, cautious, humble, exactly what I needed close to me. I drafted up a quick contract, gave the old man 2 taels of silver with some grain. As for the other families with daughters, come to Saiwa village. And the feeling is mutual. They can marry and become full villagers. Trading goes briskly as people bring property deeds, furniture, and clay pots. It gave desperate people a way to accept help without losing their dignity. But get this, chaos erupts, flanked by 6 tough-looking thugs. John Ermazi, Shango's village chief. He starts screaming about unauthorized gatherings and smash my trade stall. He accuses me of stealing Shango's property, inciting unrest with some sinister plot, claiming it as property. But Tia Lao Ba grabs his cane and confronts him directly. He points out this is technically Saiwa village land, but John Ermazi hides behind his official title, threatening that herding a county appointed brings serious consequences for all of Saiwa. I pull Tia Lao Ba back gently. "You are the chief." He puffs up, telling me to leave my goods and get out. I smile. Then, I let him see my real eyes, the ones that made barbarian soldiers freeze in place and bandit leaders run. Suddenly, his thugs cannot move. "You are a chief, and I am a chief, so beating you is perfectly fair game." I slap him right across the face, sending him sailing to crash into the dirt. He screams about reporting me to the authorities, while the shoved-aside Shango villagers stare in shock. They didn't leave. They'd been waiting for exactly this, to see their terrible tormentor knocked flat, and their faces lit up with joy. I crouched next to John Ermazi and whispered in his ear, "Wanna report me now? Did you never wonder what happened to Wang Chongsheng?" He went pale. The mysterious disappearance of the former chief of Saiwa village was famous gossip, so I told him plainly, "Retire quietly, and you might just die of old age. Otherwise, I've heard those Golu Peak bandits are pretty active lately. They'll wipe out entire families without blinking." Terror filled his eyes. He'd already heard the rumors that I'd absorbed Taiwan Nation, and that I had close ties to bandits. Went silent, grabbed his cane, hobbled to his sons. "Let's go," he muttered, then fled. But a complete coward against anyone with real strength. Even Wang Chongsheng had more of a backbone. With him gone, The villagers stared with admiration. The trading went on until evening. We exchanged more than half a cartload of grain for land deeds and household goods, plus a brand new batch of eager recruits for Lin Ziji's guard training. I brought Liu Yan back home and handed her to Wen Qing. Then, I went out to look for Wang Dinglu. John Ermazi might be a total coward, but he was still a pretty major loose end. I had to make sure he didn't just leave. Wearing pretty strange smiles, I asked where Liu Yan was. I slowly pushed open the bedroom door. Liu Yan was standing right there in the wooden bathtub I'd built, looking completely flustered. She'd been told by my wives to prepare herself for me. Somehow, they got this crazy idea into their heads that buying a young maid meant, well, intimacy. But the girl was barely 14, still a child really, grabbing the outfit Wen Din had prepared. She whimpered, "Master doesn't want me," my father said. I cut her off, knowing if I did that, how would I be any different from Macy and John? Instantly, relief washed over her face, sighing in gratitude. Then she murmured that since I had already seen her, she could never marry anyone else now. I told her we would cross that bridge when she grew up, and was truly willing, not just obedient. There's a difference between not resisting. Look at this, 3 guilty faces stared in disbelief. Asking whose idea this was, Wen Din sheepishly stepped forward, claiming she really thought that was what maids were for. As I pretended to be angry, all 3 piled into my arms. Shang Yu even admitted she admired me much more now, and ordered them to go cook dinner. Liu Yan emerged fully dressed and calm, instantly jumping in to help cook. The small table felt pretty cramped, with 5 of us. Honestly, who wouldn't love 4 beautiful girls watching them eat? I made a mental note to have Zuzi build a bigger table. Something told me this household would only keep growing. The next morning, I took Shang Yu to the horse farm. With the Shango recruits, the force now numbered 44. After a solid morning of training, I picked 6 of the absolute fastest and handed them over to Wang Dinglu to establish outer defense outposts. 24 stayed under Lin Zhouoxi for daily patrols. The rest went to Shang Yue in 3 shifts and weapons training. Their job was defending the critical sites, the kill and smithy, warehouses and horse farm. Add in my personal inner circle. Saiwa village now boasted nearly 60 combat-ready fighters. Pretty solid, right? Juzi hauled in a heavy crate with several helpers. He'd finished those wooden arrowheads I ordered, way faster than expected, and that's not all. Plus over 300 spear shafts, just waiting for Zhang Yijui's iron tips. The kid was a machine. I rewarded him with a whole chicken I'd brought from Shango, but he just scratched his head, saying no girl would ever want him. I slapped his big, muscular arm and laughed. Women absolutely love strong, skilled men, not those tiny arm shields used by the Fanling army, but massive, full-body tower shields, tall enough to reach a man's chest, and wide enough to crouch behind. They needed slots to brace heavy spears through. Eventually, when I build muskets, these exact shields will hold gun barrels. A firearm shield formation capable of sweeping entire armies. But hey, that's the future. Juzi's eyes lit up at the new challenge, and he immediately ran off to start designing. Right then, Wang Shan came sprinting over, clutching something tight and shouting out. He'd been chopping trees deep in the mountains. He handed it over, pitch black, heavy as iron with a glossy surface and faint red veins running right through it. Black iron ore, high-grade stuff, too. My heart pounded. A single rock meant nothing. But if this came from a massive vein, an unregistered, untouched deposit deep in our mountains, think about how massive this is. With enough ore, I could build blast furnaces and manufacture steel on an industrial scale. Weapons, armor, tools, everything. I ran straight to the smithy. Zhang Tetsue confirmed it instantly. Premium black iron. It was far better than his usual stock. Then, his face went dead serious. "Chief, this stuff is incredibly good material. Mining without the Empire's permission, that gets you sentenced to death." Every dynasty kept tight control over iron. Unauthorized mining was straight-up treason. I know. Do not worry about that part. Just tell me, if I gave you 5,000 zhang of this. The blacksmith's jaw literally hit the floor. 5,000 zhang was enough to equip a whole regiment. He quickly calculated based on his furnace size. 100 zhang per day, maximum, yielding only about half of that in usable iron. 5,000 zhang would take at least a month of non-stop work, and that is assuming unlimited charcoal. Even then, the raw iron still needed a ton of work, melting and hammering, clearing out impurities, before it could actually become proper wrought iron, which is exactly what we needed for the armor. telling him he better start getting ready. He'd have a pretty busy winter ahead. Leaving the forge, I immediately called for Wang Shan, sending him with some trusted men to scale the mountain and scout that ore vein. Next, I headed straight over to Wei Chun's place. He just ate and slept constantly since arriving here in Sawa village. It was high time he actually earned his keep. I laid out my master plan, frame Gao Lefeng for the mining operation, and use Wu Zhang as the bait. No actual method, just a final goal. I wanted him to figure out details himself. Tunji and knew Gao Lefeng's crew inside out, yet he tried to refuse. Strategist skills, which got him going. He agreed to do it, but only if I went with him. I really had no choice but to agree. Gao Lefeng's brutal second-in-command. He was visiting a courtesan at the Yihang brothel in the county town quite regularly. By Wu Jiang's count, his next visit is in 2 days. Meanwhile, Wang Shan's scouting team returned that evening with a solid report. It was a small ravine, mostly buried deep under the mountain. Now look at this map of the surrounding terrain. The vein sat in a triangle near Saiwa village, Shango village, and the main county town. Further along that exact direction was Yangba village, the very place Gao Lefeng stole war horses, on the massive Dragon Head mountain range. I put Wang Shan and Wang Dinglu on a tight round-the-clock digging duty, even without proper mining tools. On the third morning, Wu Zhang, Jai, Shanchuan, and I set out for the county town. We stopped by my father-in-law's place first, already packing up, just waiting for Wu Zhaolong's next trip to the horse ranch. I left him some silver, and we moved on that very evening. The three of us walked right through the doors of the Yihang brothel. What I did not know was right across the street stood Long Ru, the military officer. He was disguised as a woodcutter, staking out the whole place. He was hunting for Honda and other bandit leaders, who were supposedly for war horses, but instead of his targets, the guy caught me entering a brothel. He almost choked on his noodles. This man, who just gave a brilliant strategy to the general, he could not believe his eyes. But get this, what I did not know was the absolute chaos happening behind the scenes. Xiaoshan with an urgent message. Lu Fan is visiting a brothel, and he totally wasted one on that. Apparently, when the general read it, her face went through a dozen different expressions, and ordered Long Ju to receive 100 strikes with the military rod. When he returned, she told herself she did not care. After all, what did his actions have to do with her? Jibu, one of her 4 top generals who happened to be in the tent, figured it out immediately. Back at the fancy brothel, the three of us walked right in. I looked like a steady, calm nobleman, and Jai Shanshuan easily passed as our bodyguard, and started hyping up a very special new girl. A total beauty with northern barbarian blood. Exotic, stunning, and supposedly quite expensive. Instantly, every alarm in my head started screaming. A woman carrying barbarian blood, appearing on the exact same night that all these bandit leaders were gathering right here to plan a joint raid. Way too convenient. Something was definitely wrong. I scanned the room. Up on the second floor, I spotted a face half hidden behind a paper fan. Madame Wang, right after her husband, Wang Chongshang, had divorced her over that ridiculous ox cart incident and some other family drama. She had ended up back at this brothel. The last time I saw her, she was absolutely miserable. But now she was glaring at me with pure hatred. Yet, looking closer, that chilling murderous intent I had felt wasn't actually coming from her. It was something else entirely, and way more dangerous. And it completely vanished before I could find the source. I quietly reached down to touch my side dagger, and double-checked the homemade explosives I had brought along. This entire operation was always going to be incredibly risky. I smirked. This night was about to get wild. Meanwhile, sitting down at a corner table just to keep watch on me, he was desperately hoping to catch me, to betray his own general. But despite his pretty clever disguise, years of hard military discipline are not easy to hide. Clearly, he must have his own private mission today. Would only spell absolute disaster for both of us. After waiting around for about 15 minutes, the doors burst open, and a dozen rough-looking thugs came swaggering inside. The head madam immediately greeted Honda right at the entrance, like she had been expecting him. Wu Zhang quietly scanned the crowd and whispered to me. They were ruthless bandit bosses from all the nearby mountains. This wasn't some casual visit to see a woman. It looked like Gao Lefeng was trying to unite all the local bandits. Wu Zhang got pretty nervous, seeing just how many enemies surrounded us. But I told him to stay calm and follow my lead. He quietly knocked out a kitchen servant, stole his clothes, and walked back out disguised as a waiter. Honestly, his disguise was pretty clumsy, but I already knew exactly what he wanted, spreading all those rumors about those barbarian camps, and Longru was right there, feeding that false info to the bandit chiefs to focus on his mission. So, Wujong bribed a local servant to get us inside, right next to Honda's room. I flashed cash. Suddenly, that reserved room was totally available, while Wujong and I pressed our ears to the wall. What we heard was seriously alarming. The bandit bosses were actually praising Gao Lefeng and stealing valuable supplies. Now watch how Honda rallies them to unite, raid those barbarian camps together, growing strong enough to fight the Fanling army. One by one, those chiefs pledged their loyalty. Wujong was completely stunned, but honestly, this made things so much easier. Once the loud shouting next door settled, Wujong and I started putting on our act. We talked loudly, pretending to be wealthy young nobles who stumbled onto some high-quality iron, and Wujong played my incredibly wealthy friend, whom I invited to invest, making sure to loudly mention just how insanely valuable this whole thing was. They were totally listening. A private iron mine meant endless weapons and pure silver, way easier than risking their lives fighting barbarians. Every single bandit chief in that room was already plotting their next move on how to steal it for themselves. That was our cue to leave. But right then, the establishment announced the arrival of their new star, an exotic beauty carrying fierce barbarian blood. Shang flower petals rained down, and literally every eye in the building turned to her. I knew we had to get moving immediately, before Honda doubled back and cornered us. But ruthless bandits were scattered everywhere below. Jumping out would definitely cause a massive scene, and one shout from Honda would completely surround us. Honestly, one look around and you know it's bad. Sure, I could handle myself in a brawl, but protecting Wujong would be trouble. When I cracked the door open, both sides of the hallway were already packed solid with bandits, so I instantly put on a curious expression, pretending to enjoy the wild show downstairs. Just like everyone else, Wujong whispered nervously, desperately asking if we could still escape. I told him to keep cool and just act like regular spectators. My backup plan was simple. When the time came, Jashan Chuan would carve out a path to our right, while I lured the heavy crowd away. If they couldn't break through, I ordered them to surrender as long as they stayed alive. Somehow, I would find a way to save them. The odds were absolutely terrible, plus dozens more outside. They called for backup, and more thugs kept arriving. Our original plan had only accounted for Honda himself. Nobody expected this. To see so many gang bosses gathered together. Talk about rotten luck. Our only saving grace was Honda's massive weakness. The moment Shuang appeared, his eyes locked onto her, and nothing else existed. She was stunning, I admit. Exotic features, incredibly deep eyes, a flawless figure, moving like something from a dream. Every single bandit in the room was hypnotized. But I had seen plenty of beautiful women before. She did not cloud my thinking. Honda's regular woman showed up, trying hard to get his attention by faking a trip in the hallway, just waved his hand, ordering someone to drag her away, threatening to kill anyone who blocked his view. That was my cue, so I nudged Wujong, and the three of us started heading toward the stairs. Then, Shuang made her announcement. She declared this was her first night, and she would pick one lucky guy to spend it. First, she would dance, and when she finished, the room erupted. Some spread out to isolated spots, thinking it would improve their chances. Honda just coughed loudly, and cleared a massive space around himself. Honestly, nobody dared stand near him. The music started, and Shuang began to dance. She was graceful and incredibly mesmerizing. Light as a bird, silk floating around her. The tempo picked up, then slowly wound down. Suddenly, her hand began sweeping across the crowd, her finger passing face after face, spinning slower and slower. Honda's heart was literally in his throat. He was certain she'd choose him, but he forgot one crucial detail. Completely calm and totally unfazed was me, and sure enough, Shuang's fingers swept past Honda. He stared, rubbing his eyes. Then, pure rage took over and he swung at me, probably thinking he'd beat the answers and keep Shuang for himself. I smiled, grabbing his fist. Too easy, right? And threw it aside like it was nothing. I nearly sent him stumbling backward. The other bandit chiefs watched in disbelief. He was ready to go completely wild when Shuang called up from below, reminding him of the promise he just made. His fist immediately went completely limp. The man truly thought with nothing but his crotch. He couldn't even see that Shuang was pulling his strings like a puppet. I noticed something pretty useful too. Not a single bandit here recognized me. That was good. Honda backed off with threats, as Shuang reached her hand to me, asking if I'd like to join her in her private room, silently begging me to say no. But I wasn't fooled. I'd watched her dance closely. Every single movement was precisely controlled. She chose me on purpose. You saw that, right? This entire setup was aimed at me from the start. I dealt with female assassins in my past life, but this was my first time meeting one in this world. She took my hand, leading me toward the stairs. The second her fingers brushed against mine, I could tell. That soft, warm touch was completely calculated to melt just about any man's willpower, but it failed on me. Instead, I casually pulled my hand free, wrapped my arm right around her waist, and pulled her body close against mine. She let out a tiny, surprised gasp but didn't resist at all. Honda almost completely exploded. He ordered his troops to surround the entire building and execute me the second I stepped outside. The guy even placed a heavy bounty on my head. 30 silver for anyone who took it. Down below, you see Longru watching me disappear with Shuang, as he quietly shakes his head in absolute disgust, muttering that our general had definitely picked the wrong man, and that I was nothing more than a brainless womanizer. Then he just sighed, going right back to trailing Honda. Everything was completely prepared beforehand. She sat me down, gently pouring the wine. Though honestly, it was pretty exhausting. On me, back in my past life, anyone pulling these cheap tricks would have caught a bullet. Not a shy blush, she then grabbed a horsehead fiddle. I watched with some real appreciation. She was pretty talented, I will give her that. The tempo suddenly quickened. Her spinning body drifted closer and closer to me, until she fell directly into my arms. She softly whispered, wondering if I found her beautiful dance mesmerizing, asking if it satisfied me, or if she was gorgeous enough to topple entire empires. I played along with her game and said. She gently pressed a finger right to my lips, then slowly leaned forward, her red lips sliding toward mine, locked in that warm embrace. I had seen this exact routine 100 times before. I knew exactly what was coming next. While her lips slowly drifted toward mine, her other hand was already reaching behind her, groping for a weapon, a hidden dagger strapped behind her horsehead fiddle. She had drawn it as she pressed against me. Her next move was to plunge it under my arm. I catch her wrist completely effortlessly. I smile, whispering that she is just too eager. Then, I twist hard. With a snapped wrist, she still swings her other hand, so I simply hurl her straight across the room. She tries to scramble back up. I pin her down, demanding immediate answers. Who sent you and why kill me? But she refuses to speak, no matter the pressure. It took a lot of force to break her silence. She was sent to kill me, and to locate a secret, hidden account ledger. She died without ever whispering a single name. This girl was clearly a highly trained assassin. Her beauty, those lethal dancing skills, none of it could come from a small town like Wanhuan County. I got dressed, fixed my clothes, and walked out. Honda and his thugs were clustered around the staircase. They had heard all the commotion from inside, assuming we were having an extremely passionate night. You see, they had absolutely no idea what went down. Honda smugly demands to know what I did with his girl. I coldly reply that she is inside as a corpse, assuming I am mocking him before flying into a rage. He immediately orders his men to kill me, but I am not focused on them. My eyes are locked onto servants by the stairs, the exact ones who arrived with Shinshin. I walked out completely alive, and that gave everything away. I was never supposed to leave that room. Honda's lackeys charged me in the tight corridor, and sheathing my dagger, I went to work. This cramped hallway barely fit 3 people at once. Numbers meant absolutely nothing. Within seconds, 7 or 8 bleeding bodies piled on the cold floor. Not a drop got on me. Watch this. Honda saw his men fall like clay dolls. Panicking, he cursed loudly, spun around, shoved past his own men to flee downstairs. The other bandit chiefs bolted too, screaming at their underlings to block my path. As they fled, I went right after them, but they weren't my actual targets anyway. My targets, those 2 servants. They quietly slipped out the front exit and ducked into the pitch-black alley beside the brothel. Longju was still downstairs in his waiter disguise, cutting through them like a true war god. I followed those 2 servants right into the alley. The split second I stepped inside, a suffocating wave of pure killing intent hit me. Doors slowly creaked open on both sides. Out from the darkness, emerged over 20 figures in identical black robes, each wielding an identical long sword. These guys were professionals. I stopped, looking around. Surrounded. Seriously, this whole setup was a trap within a trap, and a second wave of professional assassins was waiting. I stood frozen in the alley, studying these assassins. Every single one was disciplined and exceptionally well trained. Clearly, elite tier fighters. Shang was just their first wave. And these killers were the backup, ready if she failed. He worked for one of the 8 powerful eunuchs running the court. Sitting right at the peak of power, those 2 fleeing servants scrambled straight toward a giant in black. Their commander, wearing a wide straw hat and a mask. And without saying anything, he drew his blade and sliced both of their heads off, their punishment for failing. But I wanted answers first. How did they know I would be at the home brothel tonight? Only a tiny handful knew my plans. If someone had sold me out, and mocking that rat mattered more than anything else. He just laughed in my face, mocking the small clay pot in my hands. Then he ordered the attack. Over 20 dark assassins drew their steel and charged. Now watch this. I let the grenade fuse burn right down, tossed it into the pack and dove behind a wall. The blast was massive. More than half collapsed screaming. The survivors froze in terror. Another explosion. The remaining few standing. They were too terrified to step forward, so I grabbed a blade. Their leader somehow survived. His own men shielded him from the worst of the shrapnel. He staggered up, completely trembling. We are talking elite assassins who had never failed. Think about it, one tiny device wiped them all out. I paced down the dark alley, quietly silencing the groaning survivors one by one, until only the boss remained. I drove the blade straight through his palm, and asked my questions again. He tried biting down on poison hidden in his teeth. Classic dead soldier trick, but I was quicker. I forcefully grabbed his jaw and shoved a dirty rag inside. Keeping him breathing was key. He was going straight to General Ling Huzishan for questioning. Right then, Long Ru's soldiers showed up, alerted by those massive blasts. Immediately, I recognized 2 as his personal bodyguards. With that done, I headed back to the brothel and ran right into Long Ru. He demanded to know why Shinshin was dead. I spelled it out. She was an assassin sent specifically to take my life. He did not believe me, so I simply gestured toward the body-filled alleyway. Go look for survivors, I said, and send whoever is breathing to my wife for interrogation. And just like that, the entire mess became his problem. Stepping back inside, the terrified customers had already fled the absolute chaos. Only the furious madam and her staff remained, desperately scrubbing away the blood. She marched right up to me, absolutely seeing red. One brutal slap sent her spinning around twice. Then I demanded to know who hired Sean to come to this home brothel. Their leader was totally silent, so I had to find the traitor myself. These low-level servants probably had no clue who was calling the shots, but someone here knew exactly how I was sold out. The second I finished speaking, wait, a sudden drop behind me. Spinning around, I saw a familiar face. Madame Wang. The very second our eyes locked, she dropped what she held and tried to run, which was basically a full confession. I easily caught her in 3 steps, and grabbed her by the hair, dragging her right to the middle of the hall. I pressed a cold dagger against her neck, demanding to know if she was the snake who leaked my movements. She exploded, shrieking that this was all my fault, that she had a peaceful life before I ruined it. She claimed she would still live in luxury with the Wang family if not for me. She spat. Some guy showed up at the brothel asking around, so she eagerly took her chance for revenge. She helped them without a second thought. Cursing my name, she swore to haunt me forever. I pressed the blade. Honestly, I felt absolutely nothing. But then, everything clicked into place for me. Where exactly were Wu Zhang and Jai Shanchuan? Long Ru soldiers gave me the answer. The fleeing bandits had dragged the 2 of them off. But luckily, they were smart enough to surrender right away, keeping them completely unharmed. I borrowed a swift mount from Long Ru, riding like crazy until catching up outside town. The bandit leaders had scattered in all directions, and Honda was escaping down a narrow side trail, guarded by only 5 or 6 men. Wu Zhang noticed me first, and kicked Jai Shanchuan into action. Jai Shanchuan instantly broke free, cutting his bonds with a snatched enemy blade, and slashed Honda right across the shoulder. Together, Jai Shanchuan and I cleared out the remaining thugs in seconds. Honda scrambled away into the dark woods. I let him go intentionally because I needed him alive. If he died, nobody would take the fall for this, or lead Gao Lufeng right into my next trap. Wu Zhang confirmed he completed his task, During his capture, he fed the bandits details about the iron, even drawing them a highly detailed map, marking the exact spot clearly. Mission accomplished. Then he asked about Shang. I revealed she was actually an elite assassin, sent straight from the High Imperial Court, and I had killed her. Wujong gasped, but he quickly processed the situation. Just think about this. Who leaked the news of the account ledger? Madame Wang only knew where to find me. She honestly knew nothing about the ledger. Without someone leaking its actual existence, the court would never have sent those assassins. To start with, Wujong scrambled to deny being the spy, which was pretty smart. He knew blame could land anywhere. I told him not to sweat it. It definitely wasn't him, Jia Shanchuan, or anyone in Saiwa village. If the villager had leaked it, those killers would have gone straight to the village to take my family as leverage, not set up a fancy trap at a brothel in the county town. The fact that they resorted to waiting, hoping I'd show up, proved their intel was actually pretty dry. So let's think about this. Only a handful of people knew about the ledger, some back in Saiwa village, and the ones at the Fan Ling army camp. When I discussed the matter with General Ling Hu Shaoshan, since Saiwa village was out, the leak must have definitely come from deep inside that military camp. The only people there were the general herself, and her 4 Wine Forest, Fire Mountain generals, but I could rule out Ling Hu, Shaoshan and Long Ru immediately. As for the others, I couldn't be sure about any of them.